Hey there, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I've put together a new collection of interesting stories, so whether you're here to relax, fall asleep, or just listen in the background, this should be a good one. Feel free to let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always interesting to see where everyone is tuning in from. Now, let's start with the first story. It is titled,
Before leaving for work, my daughter said, "Dad, don't go today." "Why, sweetie? Just stay home, please." I laughed it off and left. An hour later, she called sobbing. "Dad, it happened. You should have listened to me." I raced back. When I opened the front door, my daughter was standing pale-faced, pointing upstairs with trembling hands. What I saw there was horrifying. Chapter 1, The Warning. Jason Boone stood in the kitchen of his craftsman home in Portland, watching the rain streak down the windows while his 7-year-old daughter, Opal, pushed scrambled eggs around her plate. She had barely touched her breakfast, and those gray eyes, so much like his own, kept darting toward him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "Dad," she said quietly, setting down her fork. "Don't go to work today." Jason glanced at his watch. He had a meeting at 9 o'clock with potential investors for Boone and Farrell Strategic Consulting, the firm he'd built from nothing with his best friend, Theron, over the past 8 years. Missing it wasn't an option. "Why, sweetie?" he asked, kneeling beside her chair. Opal's small hands gripped the edge of the table. "Just stay home, please." His daughter had always been sensitive, what his mother called intuitive beyond her years. 3 months ago, she'd refused to get in the car before a family trip, crying until they delayed, leaving by an hour. They later learned a multi-car pileup had occurred on the highway at exactly the time they would have been there. His wife, Darlene, had dismissed it as coincidence. Jason wasn't so sure, but today he had no choice. The Richardson account was worth $3 million, and Theron had been handling most of the prep work. Jason needed to be there to close it. "I'll be home by dinner," he promised, kissing the top of Opal's head. "We can watch that documentary about the octopus you wanted to see." Her chin trembled. "Something bad is going to happen, Daddy. Something really bad." Darlene appeared in the doorway, her auburn hair pulled into a careless ponytail, wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt. At 34, his wife of 9 years still turned heads, but lately she'd seemed distant, distracted. She blamed it on stress from her freelance graphic design work. "Pal, stop making a fuss," Darlene said, her tone sharper than necessary. "Your father has important things to do." Jason caught something in his wife's eyes. A flicker of something he couldn't identify. Guilt. Fear. It passed so quickly he thought he'd imagined it. "I'll be fine, Opal girl," he said, forcing confidence into his voice. "I promise." An hour later, Jason sat in the sleek conference room of their downtown office, reviewing the Richardson pitch for the third time. Theron hadn't shown up yet, which was odd. His business partner was many things brash, occasionally reckless with money, prone to taking credit for Jason's ideas, but never late for important meetings. Jason's phone buzzed. Opal's name flashed on the screen. His heart clenched. She never called during school hours. "Opal. Dad, it happened." Her voice dissolved into sobs. "You should have listened to me." The phone nearly slipped from his hands. "What happened? Are you okay? Where are you?" "I'm home. I forgot my permission slip for the field trip. So the teacher had me call Mama bring it." "But Dad, when I got home," her breath hitched. "You need to come home right now." "Is your mother okay? Are you hurt?" "I'm not hurt, but you need to come home. Please hurry." Jason was already moving, grabbing his keys, ignoring the confused looks from his assistant as he sprinted past. The 15-minute drive took 8, his mind racing through possibilities. A break-in, an accident, a medical emergency, never the truth. He left his car running in the driveway, burst through the front door to find Opal standing at the base of the stairs, pale as milk, her small body trembling. "Opal, what?" She pointed upstairs with a shaking hand, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I heard noises from your bedroom. I thought maybe Mom fell or something, so I went to check." Jason's legs moved on autopilot, taking the stairs 2 at a time. The master bedroom door stood ajar. He could hear it now. Low voices, movement, the unmistakable sounds of intimacy. He pushed the door open. Darlene and Theron froze, a tangle of sheets and guilt. His wife's face drained of color. His best friend, his business partner, the man who'd been best man at his wedding, who was Opal's godfather, had the audacity to look annoyed at the interruption. The world tilted. 8 years of friendship, 9 years of marriage. All of it obliterated in a single moment. Jason, Darlene gasped, clutching the sheet to her chest. "We didn't how long?" His voice came out eerily calm, a thin veneer over the volcanic rage building in his chest. Theron sat up, running a hand through his dark hair with the same casual confidence he brought to client meetings. "Look, man, we need to talk about this rationally." "How long?" Darlene's eyes filled with tears. 2 years. 2 years. 730 days of lies. Of coming home to a wife who kissed him hello while her body still bore the impression of another man. Of working side by side with a friend who was systematically destroying his life. "Get out," Jason said quietly. "Both of you." Now, Chapter 2. The depths of betrayal. Darlene threw on clothes with trembling hands, her earlier bravado crumbling. "Jason, please, we need to talk about this. Think about Opal. Don't you dare say her name." The words came out like ice. "You don't get to use our daughter as a shield." Though was dressing with infuriating slowness, his expression shifting from caught red-handed to something more calculated. Jason recognized that look. It was the same one Theron wore when he was planning his next move in a negotiation. "You're not thinking clearly," the said. "Let's all take a breath and discuss this like adults." "Adults?" Jason laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "You want to talk about adult behavior? Get the hell out of my house before I do something we'll all regret." After they left, Theron pausing at the door as if he might say more than thinking better of it. Jason found Opal curled up on the living room couch, her arms wrapped around her knees. He sat beside her, pulling her into his lap like he'd done when she was smaller. "I'm sorry you had to see that, baby. Is mommy leaving?" Opal's voice was small, muffled against his chest. "I don't know yet, but whatever happens, you and I are going to be okay. I promise you that." They sat like that for a long time while Jason's mind began to shift from the initial shock into something more analytical. This was what he did. Assess crises, identify patterns, develop strategies. He'd built a career on understanding human behavior and motivation. 2 years. That meant the affair had started around the time Boone and Frell had landed their first major corporate client. Around the time Darlene had suddenly become supportive of his long work hours. Around the time they had suggested they expand the business, requiring Jason to take out a significant loan using their house as collateral. The pieces began clicking into place with sickening clarity. His phone rang. "Oliver Moon, his attorney and one of his few genuine friends. I just got a very interesting call from Theron Farrell." Oliver said without preamble. "He wants to discuss dissolving the partnership and claims you've been engaging in financial impropriety." "Jason, what the hell is going on?" Jason's blood ran cold. "I'll be at your office in 30 minutes. He called Leshe Davidson, their elderly neighbor, to watch Opal. Leshe arrived within minutes, her weathered face creasing with concern when she saw the state of them both. "Go do what you need to do," she said quietly. "Opal will be safe with me." Oliver Moon's office overlooked the Willamette River. The attorney was in his late 50s, sharp-minded and sharper dressed with silver hair and the build of someone who had once been a college athlete. He'd been Jason's father's lawyer before his father's death from cancer 5 years ago. "Sit," Oliver commanded, gesturing to a leather chair. "Start from the beginning." Jason told him everything. The affair, the timing, his growing suspicions about Theron's motivations. Oliver listened without interruption, his expression growing darker. "I pulled the partnership records while you were driving over," Oliver said, turning his computer monitor toward Jason. "Look at this." The screen showed a series of financial transfers from Boone and Frell's operating account to a newly formed LLC. The company name made Jason's stomach drop. Frell Consulting Group. "He's been siphoning money for 6 months, Oliver continued. "Small amounts at first, then increasingly larger sums. And see this, he's been having our shared clients sign amended contracts with clauses that allow them to transfer to a successor company with minimal penalty. He's planning to steal the business." The words came out flat, emotionless. "That's my assessment. And based on the timing of his call to me, I'd say he's accelerating his timeline. He probably didn't expect you to find out about the affair for a few more months." Jason's mind raced. Theron had access to everything. Client lists, proprietary methodologies, strategic frameworks Jason had spent years developing. The non-compete clause in their partnership agreement had a loophole had insisted on adding 3 years ago. At the time, Jason had thought it was paranoia about being locked out of the industry if things went south. Now he understood it was premeditation. "There's more," Oliver said grimly. "The loan you took out 6 months ago to expand the office. Theron added you as the sole guarantor. If the business fails, you're personally liable for $800,000. That's not what I signed." "Are you certain?" "Because the document filed with the bank has your signature." Jason closed his eyes. He'd signed dozens of documents that month during the expansion. Theron had always handled the administrative details while Jason focused on strategy and client relations. It would have been easy to slip in an altered agreement. "He's planned this perfectly," Jason said quietly. "Seduce my wife, destroy my marriage, steal my business, and leave me buried under debt. It's diabolical," Oliver agreed. "But here's what he didn't count on. You being you. You're the best strategic mind I've ever seen, Jason. If anyone can outmaneuver him, it's you." Jason stood walking to the window. Rain pelted the glass, turning Portland into a watercolor blur. His reflection stared back at him. A man who'd built his entire adult life on trust and partnership, now facing the rubble of everything he believed in. But underneath the devastation, something else was crystallizing. A cold, calculating clarity. "Oliver, I need you to do something for me," he said. "Don't respond to Theron's call yet. Stallium, tell him you need to review documents." "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking Theon has spent 2 years setting up his perfect crime. It's time I showed him what a real strategist can do." Chapter 3, The Hidden Hand. That evening, with Opal asleep at Leshe Davidson's house, Jason sat in his home office and did what he did best. Analyze the battlefield. Theron Frell, age 36, grew up in wealth but squandered most of his inheritance on bad investments before meeting Jason in an MBA program 10 years ago. Charismatic, persuasive, but fundamentally insecure. He resented Jason's natural talent for reading people and situations even as he relied on it to build their business. Darlene Boone Lucero, age 34, came from a working-class family in Sacramento. Her mother, Esperanza Flores, had raised 3 daughters alone after Darlene's father abandoned them. Darlene had always been sensitive about money, about status. When had that insecurity become an opening for Theron? Jason pulled up old photos on his computer, company parties, vacations, Opal's birthday celebrations. He studied Theron and Darlene's body language in each image, looking for the moment the affair had begun. There, a photo from the company's 5th anniversary celebration. Theron's hand on Darlene's lower back, her body angled toward him, the micro-expressions of intimacy. Jason had been giving a speech, his back to them both. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk about Opal's future. About doing this the right way. Darlene using their daughter to manipulate him already." Before he could respond, another message appeared. This one from Theron. "The business is going to get messy. Let's settle this professionally. I'm willing to buy you out for $200,000. $200,000 for a company currently valued at over $3 million. It was insulting. It was also a mistake. Theron had shown his hand too early, revealing his desperation. That meant there was something Jason didn't know yet. Some deadline driving Theron's timeline. Jason opened his laptop and began digging. He'd built Boone and Frell's systems, had access to everything. If the thought changing a few passwords would stop him, he'd underestimated his opponent. 3 hours later, Jason sat back in his chair, a grim smile on his face. He'd found it. Theron had been courting investors for Frell Consulting Group for months, but the capital was contingent on him acquiring Boone and Frell's client list and methodologies legitimately, meaning through a buyout or dissolution that wouldn't trigger lawsuits. The investor commitment was set to expire in 30 days. But there was more. Theron had made promises he couldn't keep, overstating the company's value, exaggerating his role in major client victories. He'd even forged Jason's signature on testimonials to investors. If those investors discovered the truth, they wouldn't just lose the deal, he'd face fraud charges. And Arlene, Jason found messages between them, carelessly left in Theron's cloud storage. She knew everything. More than that, she'd actively helped using her graphic design skills to create fake documents and presentations for Theron's investor pitches. They'd been partners in every sense of the word. Jason's hands trembled as he read the messages. In one, Darlene wrote, "He still doesn't suspect anything. He's so trusting it's almost pathetic. Once you have the company, we can file for divorce and I'll get half of everything anyway. Then we'll be set." Theron's response, "You're brilliant. We'll be in Bali this time next year, and he'll be drowning in debt." Poetic justice for always acting like he's smarter than everyone else. The words cut deeper than the affair itself. This wasn't passion or weakness. It was calculated cruelty. Jason closed the laptop and walked to his liquor cabinet, pouring 3 fingers of whiskey. He didn't drink it. Instead, he stared at the amber liquid, thinking about his father. Malcolm Boone had been a civil engineer who built bridges across 3 continents. But his real expertise had been in understanding structural weaknesses, the tiny flaws that under the right pressure would cause an entire system to collapse. Every structure has a breaking point. His father used to say, "The key is knowing where to apply force." Jason had built a career on that principle. He'd helped companies identify their structural weaknesses, taught them to shore up vulnerabilities before competitors could exploit them. Now it was time to apply those same skills to a different kind of structure. He and Darlene had built their betrayal on several key supports: secrecy, timing, financial leverage, and Jason's expected emotional devastation. Remove those supports and the entire thing would collapse. But it had to be done carefully, strategically. Jason pulled out a notebook, paper, not digital, nothing that could be traced or hacked, and began to write. At the top of the page, he wrote one word: architect. That's what he'd always been really, not just of buildings or businesses, but of outcomes. He'd spent 10 years learning to design scenarios where clients emerged victorious while their competitors never even understood what had happened. Now he would architect something else entirely, not just revenge, justice. By dawn, he had the framework. It would take precision, patience, the willingness to hurt in the short term for victory in the long term. But first, he needed allies. He picked up his phone and made 2 calls. The first to Oliver Moon. "I need you to file a forensic audit request on Boone and Frell. Make it look like you're building a case for my defense, but I want everything exposed." The second to an old friend from his MBA program, Terry Mata, who now worked in private investigation. "I need everything you can find on the Farrell. Financial history, relationships, weaknesses, and I needed to stay off the books." Terry was silent for a moment. "This isn't like you, Jason." "No," Jason agreed. "It's not, but I'm learning." He hung up and looked at the notebook again. 9 steps. 9 moves that would dismantle everything Thien and Darlene had built while leaving Jason and Opal standing in the clear. The game had begun. Chapter 4. Foundation cracks. Terry Mata arrived at Jason's house 3 days later with a manila envelope thick enough to be a novel. The private investigator was a compact man with careful eyes and the methodical demeanor of someone who made his living uncovering secrets. "You sure you want to read this?" Terry asked, setting the envelope on the kitchen table. "Some things once you know them." "I'm sure." Terry nodded and left without another word. Jason waited until Opal was at school before opening the envelope. The first section covered the finances. Despite the appearance of success, the expensive suits, the sports car, the waterfront condo, Theron was drowning in debt, credit cards maxed out, personal loans from shadowy sources, gambling losses at the local casino totaling over $150,000 in the past year. The affair with Darlene wasn't just about desire or betrayal. Theron needed money desperately, and Boone and Frell represented his only way out. The investor deal was his lifeline. Without it, the people he owed money to would come collecting. The second section detailed Theron's other relationships. There was a string of affairs, one overlapping with the next, including one with a woman named Randy Holloway, who happened to be married to one of Theron's biggest investors. Jason studied Rye's photo. She was beautiful in a calculated way. Expensive highlights, designer clothes, the kind of woman who used her appearance as currency. According to Terry's notes, she and Theron had been seeing each other for 4 months, meeting at hotels while her husband traveled for business. The third section was about Darlene. Her graphic design business was failing. She lost her 3 biggest clients in the past 6 months, hadn't landed new work, and was behind on her business loan payments. The loan she'd taken out without telling Jason using forged documents that showed his consent. They've been planning this for a long time and they've been getting sloppy, desperate. Jason's phone rang. Oliver Moon. The forensic audit turned up something interesting. The attorney said, "Theron's been making payments to someone named Kelvin Gregory. Does that name mean anything to you?" Jason's blood chilled. "He's a business broker. Specializes in hostile takeovers and corporate dissolution. Well, according to these payments, Theron retained him 8 months ago. Long before any of this came to light, 8 months. That was 2 months before Jason had taken out the expansion loan. Theron had been planning the destruction of their partnership before there was even a partnership to destroy. There's something else," Oliver continued. "Gregory has a reputation. He doesn't just facilitate legal takeovers. He's been investigated twice for fraud, once for witness intimidation. The charge is never stuck, but the pattern is clear." "You're saying Theron hired a criminal to help him steal my company?" "I'm saying you're dealing with someone more dangerous than a simple adulterer and embezzler. Watch your back, Jason." After hanging up, Jason sat with the implications. Theron wasn't just desperate. He was working with people who didn't play by rules. That changed the game entirely, but it also presented an opportunity. Jason spent the next week executing phase 1 of his plan documentation. He gathered every piece of evidence of Theron's embezzlement, every forged signature, every doctor document. He created redundant backups stored in multiple secure locations. If Theron tried to destroy evidence, he'd find himself grasping at air. Simultaneously, Jason began playing the role of the defeated husband. He sent Darlene a text. "We should talk about custody arrangements. I don't want to make this ugly." Her response came immediately. "Thank you for being reasonable. I know this is hard, but it's for the best. We can co-parent Opal beautifully." The audacity of it almost made him laugh. She actually thought she'd won. He wrote, "Let's discuss the buyout. I want this over with." Theron's reply was magnanimous. "I'm glad you're being mature about this. We can both move forward. I'll have Gregory draw papers." Perfect. Let them think he was broken, defeated, ready to surrender. Let them get comfortable in their victory. Meanwhile, Jason made another call. This one to Federico Davidson, Leche's nephew, who worked in investigative journalism for the Oregonian. They met at a coffee shop downtown, raining on the windows. "I need to show you something," Jason said, sliding a flash drive across the table. "But you can't run with it yet. Not until I give you the word." Federico examined the drive with a skeptical look of someone who'd been burned by sources before. "What's on it?" "Evidence of corporate fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Names you'll recognize. A story that'll make your career." "Why wait?" "Because timing is everything. Run it too early and the people involved will scatter, destroy evidence, claim victimhood. Wait for my signal and you'll have them dead to rights with no way out." Federico pocketed the drive. "You're playing a dangerous game, Jason." "No," Jason corrected. "I'm finishing one someone else started. I'm just better at it than they are." Chapter 5. Strategic Deception. 2 weeks after the discovery, Jason sat across from Kelvin Gregory in the man's downtown office. Gregory was in his 50s, impeccably dressed with the empty smile of a career predator. On his desk sat a buyout agreement that would transfer Jason's share of Boone and Frell to Theron for $200,000. "This is very fair considering the circumstances," Gregory said smoothly. "Mr. Frell is being generous." Jason scanned the document. It was a masterpiece of legal manipulation. Signing it would leave him with nothing while absolving the of any wrongdoing. It would also void the non-compete clause for Theron while binding Jason to a 5-year restriction. "I'd like my attorney to review this," Jason said mildly. Gregory's smile tightened. "Of course, but Mr. Frell's offer expires in 72 hours. After that, I'm afraid the terms may become less favorable." "Is that a threat, Mr. Gregory? Simply a business reality? You have considerable debt, a failed business, a messy divorce on the horizon. Sometimes the wise move is knowing when to fold." Jason stood, leaving the unsigned documents on the desk. "I'll be in touch." Outside, he called Oliver. "They're getting desperate, which means we're close." "Close to what?" "To them making a mistake they can't recover from." The next phase required subtlety. Jason began reaching out to Boone and Frell's key clients, not to badmouth but to have informal conversations about the company's future. He expressed concern about structural changes and new strategic directions that might not align with the client's best interests. He didn't lie. He didn't accuse. He simply planted seeds of doubt. Within days, 2 major clients called to express concerns about the rumors of partnership dissolution. Theron in turn had to accelerate his investor timeline, pushing Farrell Consulting Group's launch forward before he'd secured all the necessary clients. Pressure, that was the key. Apply pressure at the right points, and people made mistakes. Meanwhile, Jason conducted his own investigation into Randy Holloway. He discovered she wasn't just having an affair with Theron. She was also her husband's business partner with signing authority on all investment accounts. The husband, Jamal Pope, was a real estate developer who'd made millions flipping properties during the market recovery. According to Terry Ma's research, Pope was notoriously jealous and had a temper that had landed him in anger management classes twice. Jason drafted an anonymous email to Jamal Pope. It contained no accusations, just a simple question. "Does your wife's investment in Farrell Consulting Group represent a conflict of interest? Might be worth having a conversation with her." He didn't send it yet. That car would be played at exactly the right moment. At home, Darlene had begun pressing for formal divorce proceedings. She'd moved into a hotel, claiming she needed space to process everything. In reality, she was staying with Theron at his condo. "We should start thinking about selling the house," she told Jason over coffee. They'd agreed to meet in public places for Opal's sake. "It's too big for you and Opal alone, and I'll need my share of the equity." "The house is in my name," Jason pointed out. "The down payment came from my father's life insurance." Darlene's expression hardened. "Oregon is a community property state. I'm entitled to half of everything we've built together, including your business debts, the loan you took out without my knowledge." She paused. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't. He sipped his coffee. I'm sure it'll all come out in discovery. He stood to leave, then paused. By the way, how's Theen's new venture coming along? I hear investor commitments can be fickle things. The look on her face told him everything. She knew they were on shaky ground. Good. That night, Opal asked him a question that stopped him cold. Dad, are you being the bad guy or the good guy? What do you mean, sweetie? She looked up from her coloring book. In your head, you're always planning something. I can tell, but I can't tell if you're planning good things or bad things. Jason knelt beside her. I'm planning to make sure you and I are okay. That's all that matters. But what about Mom? He chose his words carefully. Your mom made choices that hurt our family. I'm making sure those choices have consequences. Does that make sense? Opal thought about it then nodded. Like when I lied about breaking your coffee mug and you made me do extra chores. Something like that, but bigger. Okay. As long as you're not being mean just to be mean. Dad, can I tell you something? Always. I knew something bad was going to happen that day, but it wasn't a dream or anything. I just felt it like a stomachache but in my head. Does that make me weird? Jason pulled her into a hug. That makes you special. And you were trying to protect me. I should have listened. Will you listen next time? Every time, he promised. That promise will be tested sooner than he expected. Chapter 6. The Trap Springs. The call came at 2 a.m. Terry Mata. His voice urgent. Jason, someone broke into your office. The police are there now. Jason was dressed and driving within minutes, his mind racing. The break-in was either legitimate, someone after computer equipment, or a targeted attempt to destroy evidence. He arrived to find 2 police officers talking to the building's night security guard. The office door had been forced open, but surprisingly little appeared to be disturbed. Computer equipment remained in place. The only thing clearly targeted, the filing cabinet where Jason kept hard copies of key business documents. They knew what they were looking for. The lead officer, Shannon Woodard, observed. She was in her late 30s, sharp-eyed with the careful manner of someone who'd seen too many crimes to be surprised by human nature. This wasn't a random burglary. No, Jason agreed. It wasn't. Officer Woodard studied him. You know who did this? I have suspicions, but nothing I can prove. Want to share those suspicions? Jason considered accusing Theron without evidence would seem like the bitter accusations of a cuckold husband, but planting the seed in law enforcement's mind might prove useful later. My business partner and I are in the middle of a contentious dissolution. I've been documenting some irregularities in our financial records. These are copies of those documents. Were Woodard corrected, gesturing to the empty filing cabinet were. Jason agreed. Fortunately, I believe in redundancy. He didn't mention that the documents in that cabinet were decoys, outdated forms, and irrelevant paperwork. The real evidence had been digitized and backed up months ago. Let the think he'd won this round. But Woodard was sharper than he'd expected. Mr. Boone, I'm going to give you some advice. Whatever you're planning, whatever game you're playing with your partner, make sure you stay on the right side of the law. Revenge has a way of making people do stupid things. I appreciate the concern, officer, but I'm not interested in revenge. No. What are you interested in? Justice, Jason said simply. There's a difference. Back home, Jason sent a carefully crafted message to Theron. I know what you did. This is over. Theron's response came within minutes. I don't know what you're talking about, but maybe we should meet face to face. Clear the air. They agreed to meet at a neutral location, the lobby bar of the Heathman Hotel. Jason arrived early, took a corner table where he could see the entire room. When they walked in, Jason barely recognized his former friend. The man looked haggarded, his usual confidence replaced by something more desperate. You look terrible, Jason observed as Theron sat down. Yeah, well, breaking and entering isn't my usual skill set. I had to hire people. Theron signaled for a whiskey. You've made this very difficult, Jason. I've made it difficult. You seduced my wife, embezzled from our company, and try to frame me for fraud. You left me no choice. Theron's voice rose, then dropped when nearby patrons glanced over. You with your perfect strategic mind, your natural talent. Do you know what it's like? Always being in someone's shadow, having clients tell you they really want to work with a smart one. So, this is about your ego. It's about survival. I'm buried in debt, Jason. People I owe money to aren't the type to wait for payment plans. Farrell Consulting Group was supposed to save me. Was Jason caught the past tense? Theron's jaw tightened. Your little conversations with our clients have spooked them. Half are reconsidering their contracts and the investors are getting cold feet because they're hearing rumors that the business is built on stolen methodologies. Imagine that. You're destroying everything. Not just for me, but for Darlene, too. We had plans, a future. You should have thought about that before you decided to burn down my life. Theron leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Sign a buyout, Jason. Take your $200,000 and walk away, because if you don't, things are going to get very unpleasant for you. Kelvin Gregory has connections. He can make your life a living hell. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. As a friend, Jason laughed, a cold sound. We stopped being friends 2 years ago. You just forgot to tell me. He stood to leave. Theron grabbed his arm. You think you're so smart, but you're not the only one who can play games. No, Jason agreed, pulling free. But I'm the only one who wins them. As he walked out, Jason sent 2 messages. The first to Jamal Pope, the anonymous email about Rye's involvement with Theron, along with a photo Terry had obtained of them entering a hotel together. The second to Federico Davidson. Stand by. The story breaks in 72 hours. The final phase was beginning. Chapter 7. Controlled demolition. Jamal Pope's response to discovering his wife's affair was volcanic and public. Within 24 hours, he'd pulled all investment commitments from Farrell Consulting Group, frozen Rye's access to their joint accounts, and filed for divorce. But more importantly, he'd started asking questions. Questions about where his money had been going, what promises Theron had made, what exactly Randy had been signing off on during her business meetings with Theron. An independent audit revealed that Randy had been funneling Pope's investment capital to Theron ahead of schedule without proper documentation or oversight. It looked less like legitimate business investment and more like money laundering. Suddenly, Theron didn't just have angry investors. He had the attention of federal investigators. Jason watched it unfold from a distance. Each piece falling into place with the precision of a demolition sequence. He designed it that way, not directly doing anything illegal, but creating the conditions where Theron's own actions would destroy him. Darlene called, panicking. Jason, you have to do something. They're investigating Theron. They think I was involved in fraud. Were you? Silence. I helped with some documents, she admitted. Graphics, presentations. I didn't know he was lying to investors. Didn't you? I didn't. Look, we need to talk about protecting Opal. If this goes to trial, Opal is protected. She has me. What you need to worry about is protecting yourself. He hung up. Oliver Moon called an hour later. Kelvin Gregory just contacted me. He wants to broker a deal. They'll void the buyout agreement and split the company's liquidation assets 50-50 if you agree not to pursue criminal charges against the. What did you tell him? That I'd relay the message. Jason, this is a good deal. You get almost $1.5 million. Clear your debts and walk away clean. No. This isn't about money, Oliver. This was never about money. Then what is it about? Jason thought about his daughter's trembling hands pointing upstairs. About 2 years of calculated lies, about the smug satisfaction on Theron's face when he'd suggested Jason should be rational. It's about making sure this never happens to anyone else. Theron and Darlene try to destroy me because they thought I'd roll over. Gregory makes a living helping predators steal from trusting partners. They all need to understand there are consequences. You're talking about scorched earth. I'm talking about justice. 2 days later, Federico Davidson's article hit the Oregonian's front page. Local consultant accused of defrauding investors' partners. It was meticulously researched. Every claim backed by documentation Jason had provided. In named names, Theron Farrell, Kelvin Gregory detailed their methods, their history of questionable deals. But what made the article devastating was its human angle. Federico had interviewed 3 other entrepreneurs who'd been victimized by Gregory's hostile dissolution tactics, always following the same pattern. Befriend, betray, legally plunder. Theron's face was plastered across the business section, looking guilty in a photo where he'd been caught mid-grimace at a charity event. The court of public opinion reached its verdict before lunch. By evening, Boone and Frell's remaining clients had terminated their contracts with Theron and reached out to Jason directly, asking if he'd consider continuing their relationships independently. Frell Consulting Group officially died before it ever launched. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. The bankruptcy filing came first. Theron, drowning in debt and legal fees, had no choice. The casino loans came due, and the people he owed weren't inclined to wait while he sorted out his legal problems. According to Terry Mata, who continued to monitor the situation, Theron had to sell his condo, his car, everything of value. He moved into a studio apartment in a part of town where he'd once dismissed clients as not our demographic. But Jason wasn't finished. The documents Theron had stolen during the break-in, those were carefully planted fakes that included what appeared to be communications between he and Gregory about bribing a city official for favorable zoning decisions. Completely fabricated, but convincing enough that when they tried to use them to deflect from his own crimes, he only implicated himself in something worse. The forgery was obvious to anyone who looked closely, but they didn't look closely. He was desperate, cornered, and he played exactly the card Jason had left for him. When the district attorney's office investigated the bribery claim, they quickly determined the documents were fake, which meant Theron had just submitted false evidence to authorities, adding obstruction of justice to his growing list of problems. Darlene tried to distance herself, claiming she'd been manipulated by Theron, but the emails and messages Jason had recovered told a different story. She'd been an active, willing participant. The divorce proceedings became a matter of public record. Oliver Moon presented evidence of her business fraud, the forged loans, the systematic deception. The judge's ruling was unambiguous. Jason retained full custody of Opal, the house, and all marital assets. Darlene was ordered to repay her fraudulent business loan, which effectively bankrupted her. She moved back to Sacramento, living with her mother, Esperanza, working retail to pay off her debts. But the cruelest cut came when her mother called Jason directly. "I raised my daughter to be better than this," Esperanza said, her voice heavy with shame. "What she did to you, to that beautiful little girl. I'm sorry isn't enough, but I'm sorry anyway. Thank you, Mrs. Flores. I want you to know we're not giving her money. She needs to face what she's done. And if there's anything Opal ever needs, you call me. She's still my granddaughter and she deserves better than this mess." It was the only grace note in the entire sordid affair. Kelvin Gregory faced his own reckoning. The article had brought him attention he didn't want. The state bar opened an investigation into his business practices. 2 former clients came forward with allegations of fraud. His career built on predatory dissolution of partnerships was coming apart. In a last desperate move, Gregory tried to sue Jason for defamation. The case was dismissed within weeks. Truth being an absolute defense against such claims. 3 months after that morning, when Opal had begged him to stay home, Jason stood in the empty office that had once been Boone and Frell. The space echoed, stripped of furniture, ready for a new tenant. Oliver Moon stood beside him. "You did it. Against all odds, you came out ahead." "Did I?" Jason looked around at the emptiness. "My marriage is over. My business partner turned out to be my enemy. My daughter saw things no child should see. But you protected her. You protected yourself. And you made sure those who wronged you faced consequences." Oliver paused. "Some might say you went too far. Some might. Do you?" Oliver considered. "I think you fought back against people who tried to destroy you using every advantage they had. You just happened to be smarter than they were. If that's wrong, then the entire concept of justice is flawed." Jason's phone buzzed. A text from Opal, who was at Leshe Davidson's house. "Can we have pizza for dinner? And can we watch the octopus movie?" He smiled. "I have to go. My daughter wants pizza. Go be with her." That's what this was all about. Anyway, Chapter 9. Architect of Tomorrow. 6 months later, Jason Boone stood in a new office, smaller than the old one, but entirely his own. The sign on the door read, Boone Strategic Consulting. He'd rebuilt from scratch, keeping only the clients who'd specifically requested to continue working with him. The business was leaner, more focused, and entirely under his control. But more importantly, he created something new, a consulting service specifically for entrepreneurs who've been victimized by hostile takeovers, predatory partners, or business fraud. He called it the Phoenix Project. His first client was a woman named Christine Herman, whose business partner had attempted the exact same playbook Gregory specialized in. Jason had identified the pattern early, helped her document everything, and set up a legal fortress that made hostile takeover impossible. She'd walked away with her company intact and her predatory partner facing charges. "You saved my life," Christine told him during their final meeting. "Not just my business, my actual life. I've been where you are," Jason said simply. "I know what it takes to fight back." At home, Opal was thriving. The trauma of that terrible day had faded, replaced by the security of knowing her father would always protect her. She still had her intuitive moments, warning him before minor problems arose, sensing when people weren't trustworthy. He'd learned to listen. "Dad," she asked one evening while they were doing dishes. "Do you still think about Mom sometimes?" "Do you?" "Yeah, I miss her, but I'm also kind of mad at her." "That's okay. You can be both. Do you think she'll ever say sorry?" Jason dried a plate, considering his words carefully. Maybe. But even if she does, it doesn't mean things go back to how they were. Some choices change everything. Like your choices changed everything for Mr. Theron and Mr. Gregory. Smart kid. I made sure they faced consequences for their actions. That's different, is it? Yes. Because they hurt people on purpose. I made sure they couldn't hurt anyone else. Opal thought about that. Okay, that makes sense. The doorbell rang. Terry Ma stood on the porch looking uncomfortable. You should see this, he said, handing Jason a thin folder. Inside was a news clipping from a Sacramento paper. Darlene Lucero, she'd taken back her maiden name, had been arrested for check fraud. Small-time stuff, but it suggested she hadn't learned anything from her previous downfall. She's working retail, stealing from the register to pay off debts. Terry said, thought you should know. Jason felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity, just the distant observation of someone watching a tragedy play out from a safe distance. Thanks for letting me know. That's it. No comment. What would I say? She made her choices. She's living with the consequences just like we all do. After Terry left, Jason stood in his home office, looking at the framed photo on his desk. It was from Opal's 8th birthday party, just the two of them at the zoo. Her face lit up with joy as she watched the octopus exhibit she'd been fascinated by ever since the documentary. That was what mattered. Not the scorched earth he'd left behind. Not the enemies he defeated. This moment, this daughter, this chance to rebuild something better. His phone rang. A potential new client recommended by Christine Herman, another entrepreneur being targeted by a predatory partner. Mr. Boone, I'm hoping you can help me. My business partner has been acting strange, and I think he's planning something. Jason picked up his notebook, the same one he'd used to architect Theron and Darlene's downfall. But this time, he'd be using those skills to build rather than destroy. Tell me everything, he said. Start from the beginning. As the client talked, Jason made notes, already identifying patterns, seeing the vulnerabilities, designing the counter-strategy. This was what he'd always done best, architect outcomes. He just needed to learn when to build and when to demolish. Outside, rain droomed against the windows. Portland weather constant and cleansing. Opal was in her room doing homework, safe and happy. Though was broke, facing multiple lawsuits and under federal investigation. Gregory had been disbarred and was facing trial for fraud. Darlene was in Sacramento burning what remained of her life one bad choice at a time. And Jason, he was teaching his daughter to trust her intuition, helping others avoid the traps he'd fallen into, and building something better from the ruins of betrayal. Some might call it revenge. Officer Woodard would probably say he'd gotten dangerously close to crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. But Jason called it justice. The kind you have to architect yourself when the people you trusted decide to become your enemies. The kind where you win not by becoming like them, but by being better, smarter, and more patient. The kind where at the end you can look at your daughter and know you fought for her without losing yourself. Dad. Opal called from her room. Can you help me with my math homework? Coming, sweetie. He closed a notebook and went to help his daughter with her fractions, leaving the ruins of his old life behind and stepping fully into the future he'd built. One careful, calculated move at a time. And there you have it.
And that concludes this story. That was a pretty wild one if you ask me. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. Now, let's get right into the next story. It's titled,
I accidentally connected to my wife's car Bluetooth and heard her planning with her ex-lover. Once he signs the house over for the tax benefits, we'll have everything we need to start our new life without that dog. They laughed. I continued being the perfect husband for another 87 days. This morning, my phone exploded with 142 missed calls. Look, I'm not saying I believe in signs from the universe. But if Tuesday mornings had a personality, this one would have been that guy at the DMV who tells you you're in the wrong line after you've waited 45 minutes. You know the type. Dead eyes, coffee breath, probably enjoys watching people suffer for sport. I was sitting in my car in the Whole Foods parking lot, which is basically where middle-class Americans go to feel superior about their organic kale while simultaneously wondering why their bank account is crying. I had my usual Tuesday routine down to a science. Grab the overpriced cold brew that tastes like liquefied smugness. Sit in the car for exactly 7 minutes listening to my classic rock playlist and mentally prepare myself for another day of pretending I enjoyed my job as a financial analyst. Spoiler alert, I didn't. But it paid for Clara's Pilates membership and our mortgage on a house that was approximately 70% her aesthetic vision and 30% my quiet acceptance of defeat. The Foo Fighters were playing through my car speakers Everlong If You're Curious, which is a fantastic song that absolutely didn't deserve to be the soundtrack to my life imploding like a poorly constructed Soule. I was halfway through my coffee doing that thing where you bob your head slightly because you're alone and nobody can judge your mediocre rhythm when my phone decided to become a complete traitor. You know that little notification sound, the one that goes ding when your Bluetooth connects. Yeah, that happened. Except I wasn't trying to connect to anything. I glanced down at my phone screen, confused, because the last time I'd intentionally paired my phone with something was probably 2019, and that was only because my car's aux cord died, and I refused to drive in silence like some kind of psychopath. The screen showed a connection to something called C's AirPods. C's AirPods, Clara's AirPods, my wife's AirPods, which were apparently close enough to my car that my phone thought, hey, you know what would be fun? Let's ruin this guy's entire existence. Technology, man. It's like having a really efficient snitch living in your pocket. And that's when I heard it. Her laugh. Not the laugh she does at dinner parties when someone tells a joke that's about as funny as a root canal. Not the polite little chuckle she reserves for her mother's Facebook memes about wine and minions. No, this was the laugh. The real one. The one that sounds like pure unfiltered joy. The kind she used to aim at me back when we first started dating and I'd do stupid impressions of action movie stars. Back when Netflix still mailed DVDs in those little red envelopes, and we'd spend entire Saturdays on the couch pretending we were going to watch something intellectual before inevitably choosing something with explosions. I hadn't heard that laugh in so long. I'd honestly forgotten she was capable of it. I thought maybe she'd surgically removed it along with her sense of humor somewhere around year 3 of our marriage. But there it was, crystal clear, coming through my car speakers like some kind of cosmic joke. And then came the voice, male. Smooth in that way that makes you want to punch a wall. The kind of voice that probably practices saying actually in the mirror every morning. Confident, smug, familiar in a way that made my stomach drop faster than the stock market in 2008. Leo. Her ex-boyfriend Leo. The guy she swore was just a friend when he started texting her 6 months ago. The guy she claimed was helping her with some business networking stuff because apparently I'm supposed to believe that business networking happens at 10 p.m. on weeknights and requires that much emoji usage. Once he signs the house over for the tax benefits, Leo's voice said, and I could practically hear the smirk in his tone. We'll have everything we need to start our new life together. God, I can't wait to be done with that dog. They laughed. That laugh, her real genuine, haven't heard it in years, laugh was being used to celebrate calling me a dog. Not even a cool dog, like a wolf or a German shepherd. Just that dog, generic, replaceable, probably the kind that pees on the carpet and chews up expensive shoes. I sat there in my car holding my overpriced coffee like it was a grenade with the pin already pulled. And I'm pretty sure my brain just stopped like it blue-screened like it had too many tabs open and the whole system just said, nah, I'm out. The classic rock kept playing. Dave Grohl was singing about wanting something he could never have, which felt aggressively on the nose. A woman walked past my car, pushing a shopping cart full of organic produce and probably zero marital problems. My coffee was getting cold. Clara and Leo were still talking in my ear, discussing their future, my house, my money, their new life, like I was some kind of obstacle course they'd already figured out how to navigate. I should have been furious. I should have driven straight to wherever she was. Burst through the door like some kind of rom-com protagonist who'd finally grown a spine and demanded answers. I should have called a lawyer immediately. I should have thrown my phone out the window and screamed into the void. Instead, I did what any mature, emotionally stable, totally not having a breakdown man would do. I finished my coffee, even though it tasted like betrayal mixed with overpriced espresso beans. Calmly got out of my car, walked in Whole Foods, and bought a 12-pack of paper towels I absolutely did not need. The cashier, a kid who couldn't have been older than 20 with a name tag that said Brandon, asked me if I wanted to donate to save the rainforest. I said yes and donated $5 because apparently even while my life was actively catching fire, I still cared about deforestation. As I walked back to my car, paper towels under my arm like some kind of domestic stability security blanket. A plan started forming in my head. It wasn't a good plan. It probably wasn't even a smart plan, but it was my plan. I wouldn't confront them. Not yet. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of knowing I knew. Instead, I'd keep pretending. I'd be the perfect husband, the obedient dog, the tax benefit signing chump they thought I was for exactly 87 days. Why 87? Because 90 felt too neat. And I've never been good at round numbers. Plus, it gave me just enough time to prepare, to document, to build a case that would make their new life look like a clearance bin sitcom nobody wanted to watch. I got back in my car, put my phone on airplane mode so I wouldn't have to hear any more of their victory celebration, and drove home with my stupid paper towels and my new sense of purpose. That dog was about to learn some new tricks. Clara came home at 9:47 p.m., which I know because I'd started checking the time like a man waiting for test results he already knew would be bad. She walked through the door with this whole performance. Keys jangling, humming some tune I didn't recognize. Probably something Leo had played for her in whatever sad little love nest they'd carved out of my ignorance. The first thing that hit me was the smell. Vanilla perfume, the expensive kind she saves for special occasions, which apparently now included betraying your husband on a Tuesday. It mixed with something else. Guilt maybe, or whatever pheromone humans release when they're actively ruining someone's life. If they could bottle that scent, they'd call it Haute Audacity and sell it at department stores next to the cologne that promises to make you irresistible to women who are definitely not your wife. I was sitting on our couch. The gray sectional sheet insisted we needed because it was mid-century modern, and I'd agreed to because I didn't want to have a 3-hour conversation about furniture, pretending to watch some documentary about penguins. I wasn't actually watching it. I was thinking about how penguins made for life, which felt like the universe had a really twisted sense of humor about what to recommend on my streaming queue tonight. "Hey honey," I said, looking up with what I hoped was my normal face and not my "I know you're planning to steal my house and run off with your ex" face. Those two expressions are surprisingly similar, by the way. Both involve smiling with your mouth while your eyes are screaming. She leaned down and I kissed her cheek, which took every ounce of self-control I didn't know I had. It was like kissing a stranger. Actually, it was like kissing someone who was actively robbing you, but pausing mid-heist to accept some casual affection. Her skin was warm, probably from whatever athletic activities she and Leo had been up to. And I had to resist the urge to ask if book club had started offering cardio classes. "How was book club?" I asked, keeping my voice light and casual, like a man who definitely didn't know his wife was lying through her recently whitened teeth. "Oh, it was great," she said, already heading toward the bedroom to change. "We discussed Tolstoy. Really dense stuff, but Margaret brought amazing wine, so that helped." Tolstoy, Clara saying she discussed Tolstoy was like our cat, Mr. Whiskers, claiming he'd solved a calculus problem. Actually, that's unfair to Mr. for Whiskers, texts, calls, receipts, suspicious late client meetings. Become a forensic accountant of my own marriage. Make the FBI look lazy. 2. Pretend to fetch affection. Act like the good boy she thinks I am. Bring her coffee in the morning. Compliment her hair. Ask about her day like I'm not aware she's spending it plotting my financial ruin. Wag my metaphorical tail like my life depends on it because it kind of does. 3. Don't bark until the right moment. Keep my mouth shut. Don't confront. Don't hint that I know. Save all the barking for day 87 when I can really sink my teeth into this situation. I stared at my list, feeling simultaneously proud and completely unhinged. This was my life now. I was a man making revenge to-do lists while his wife showered off evidence of her affair. If this were a movie, this would be the scene where inspirational music played and the protagonist looked determined. In reality, I was in my pajama pants eating stale tortilla chips and wondering if this was rock bottom or just a preview of the basement below rock bottom. The shower turned off. I quickly saved the document in a folder I labeled Tax Stuff 2024 because Clara would rather die than look at anything related to taxes voluntarily. Then I closed my laptop and returned to my penguin documentary where at least some species on this planet understood commitment. Clara came out in her bathrobe, hair wrapped in a towel, looking comfortable and content in a way that made me want to scream into a pillow. "What are you watching?" she asked, sitting down next to me. "Penguins," I said. "Cute," she replied, already looking at her phone. Probably texting Leo about how oblivious her husband was. How easy this was going to be. How that stupid dog hadn't even noticed his leash was about to be handed to someone else. I waited until she went to bed, claiming she was exhausted from book club, which must have been code for emotionally drained from juggling 2 relationships and a fraud scheme. Before I pulled out my laptop again, I spent the next 2 hours researching divorce lawyers in our area. I read reviews like I was shopping for a surgeon, because in a way, I was. I needed someone who could surgically remove Clara from my life while keeping all my vital organs, financial and otherwise, intact. That's when I found her. Daphne Vega. 5-star reviews across the board. Testimonials that read like movie taglines. She destroyed my ex in court. Worth every penny. This woman is a shark in a blazer. Her profile picture showed a woman in her 40s with dark hair, sharp eyes, and a smile that suggested she'd seen every dirty divorce trick in the book and had probably invented a few herself. Her website had a contact form. I filled it out at 2:47 a.m. typing with the manic energy of a man who just discovered his wife was a cartoon villain. Subject: need consultation ASAP. Message: My wife is planning to commit fraud, steal my house, and run off with her ex. I have evidence. I have 87 days. I need someone who can help me make sure the only thing she gets in the divorce is regret. I hit send before I could second guess this myself, closed my laptop, and went to bed next to my wife. The woman who'd promised to love and cherish me, but apparently read that as more of a suggestion than a binding contract. The next morning, I woke up to an email from Daphne Vega's office. She could see me at 10 a.m. I replied immediately. I'll be there. At 9:55 a.m., I walked into her office building downtown, took the elevator to the 7th floor, and sat in a waiting room that smelled like leather and expensive legal revenge. When her assistant called my name, I followed him into an office with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city that probably cost more per month than my car payment. Daphne Vegas sat behind a desk that looked like it had witnessed 1,000 marriages die. She looked exactly like her picture, sharp, professional, and slightly terrifying in the best possible way. So, she said, folding her hands on her desk and looking at me with the intensity of someone who charged $400 an hour and earned every cent. You want revenge or results? I didn't even hesitate. Both. She smiled. Not a warm smile, but the kind of smile a chess player gives when they see checkmate 6 moves ahead. Then here's what you're going to do, she said, leaning forward. You're going to start acting dumber than you feel. Daphne's advice echoed in my head for the next 72 hours. Act dumber than you feel. Which, if I'm being honest, was simultaneously the easiest and hardest thing I'd ever been asked to do. Easy because I'd apparently been doing it for months without even realizing it. Hard because now I had to do it intentionally with purpose, like method acting, except the role was oblivious husband who deserves a participation trophy. So I became husband of the goddamn year. Monday morning I woke up before Clara, which never happens because I typically sleep like someone who's accepted defeat as a lifestyle choice, and made breakfast. Not cereal, not toast, actual breakfast. Scrambled eggs with chives, turkey bacon, because she's been on some health kick since Leo probably told her she should optimize her wellness journey, or whatever meaningless phrase people use now instead of just saying diet. I even arranged fresh berries in a bowl like I was auditioning for a cooking show on basic cable. When Clara walked into the kitchen, she actually stopped and stared like I just performed a magic trick. You made breakfast? Yeah, I said, channeling every bit of golden retriever energy I could muster. Figured you could use something nice after all those late client meetings. You've been working so hard. The lie tasted worse than burnt toast, but I smiled through it. She looked genuinely touched, which would have been sweet if she wasn't actively planning to commit fraud. She kissed my cheek, the same cheek I'd been offering up like some kind of betrayal target practice, and sat down to eat. You're the best, she said. And I swear to God, if irony could kill, we'd both be dead on the kitchen floor. Tuesday, I folded laundry, the entire basket, matched every sock, which is basically a miracle because our dryer eats socks like they're an endangered delicacy. I even folded her delicate items with the kind of care usually reserved for handling explosives, because apparently that's what a good husband does when his wife is sleeping with her ex and plotting real estate fraud. Wednesday, I complimented her shoes. Those are really nice, I said, pointing at her new heels that probably cost more than our water bill. They make you look tall, she beamed. Actually beamed like I just told her she'd won a Pulitzer for adultery. The whole time I was watching, learning, documenting, because while I was playing the role of America's most supportive spouse, Clara's phone was lighting up like a Christmas tree at a mall that peaked in the 90s. Every notification made this little ping sound that started to feel less like technology and more like the universe's way of reminding me I was married to a woman whose guilty conscience had its own ringtone. She placed her phone face down on the counter. Classic cheater move, by the way, but I could still hear it. Ping ping ping. It was like Chinese water torture, except instead of water, it was the slow drip of my marriage dissolving. Thursday evening, while she was in the shower, she'd been showering a lot lately, which I'm sure was totally unrelated to anything. I casually picked up her phone. She'd changed her passcode, which was adorable. Like, I hadn't watched her type it in roughly 8,000 times over the past 5 years. It used to be my birthday. Now, it was I tried a few combinations. Her birthday? No. Her mom's birthday? No. Then I tried it. 0, 7, 1, 5. July 15th, Leo's birthday, which I only knew because she'd mentioned it once 3 years ago when explaining why she needed to send a friendly text to an ex. I'd thought nothing of it at the time because I was stupid and trusting and apparently auditioning for the role of guy who never sees it coming in the movie of my own life. The phone unlocked, her messages loaded, and there it was, a contact saved as Carpet Guy. Carpet Guy. Let me repeat that for emphasis. She saved her secret lover as Carpet Guy, Like some kind of home improvement professional who was here to discuss shag versus Berber. I had to physically stop myself from laughing because if you're going to destroy someone's life, at least be creative about the deception. Carpet guy is what you name someone when you have the imaginative capacity of a parking meter. I scrolled through their messages. Each one was worse than the last. Carpet guy, miss you already. Can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore. Clara, soon once the house is transferred, we're free. He's so clueless. It's almost sad. Carpet guy, you sure he'll sign? Clara, please. I could get him to sign anything. He thinks I'm at book club right now, faced with tears of joy. That emoji, that laughing emoji. She was laughing about how easy I was to manipulate while I was downstairs folding her underwear like some kind of domestic servant who'd lost all sense of self-respect. I took screenshots, sent them to my email, deleted the evidence that I'd sent them, put her phone back exactly where she'd left it, face down like the ticking time bomb it was. When she came out of the shower, I was on the couch watching a home renovation show because the irony was too perfect to resist. Hey, babe, I said, all casual. Did the carpet guy ever get back to you about that estimate? I washed her face. She didn't even flinch. Oh, yeah, she said smoothly. He said he'd have to come back next week. Scheduling conflict. That's too bad, I replied. I really think new carpet would improve the house value, you know, for tax purposes. She smiled, sat down next to me, put her head on my shoulder like we were still a couple who did things like casual couch cuddling instead of a husband and wife crime drama waiting to reach its season finale. Inside my head, my inner monologue was absolutely screaming. This woman thinks I'm an emotional Roomba. Quiet, obedient, programmed to clean up her messes and easily replaceable with a newer model when I stop working properly. But outside, I was the picture of calm. I even put my arm around her because Daphne had said to act normal, and normal me was apparently a doormat with a pulse. Friday, I offered to help her with taxes. Sat down at the dining room table with our laptop and a bunch of forms I printed out that morning, looking every bit like a man who was excited about the IRS and not at all like someone plotting his wife's downfall. You know, I said, clicking through TurboAx like I was genuinely interested. I was reading about married couples transferring property for tax benefits. Could save us a lot of money. Her eyes lit up. I'm not exaggerating. They lit up like I just told her she'd won the lottery and also her ex-boyfriend was going to become even more insufferable, which apparently was her ideal Thursday night. Really? She said, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. That's interesting. We should look into that. Definitely, I agreed. I'll do some research. Maybe talk to our accountant. I wouldn't talk to our accountant. I'd talk to my accountant, the one I'd hired separately, the one Clara didn't know about. The one who was helping me understand exactly how she was planning to screw me over so I could return the favor with interest. That weekend, Clara went to a late client meeting on Saturday afternoon. She said she'd be back by 6. I said, no problem. Take your time. Like a husband who definitely wasn't tracking her phone's location through a shared family app she'd forgotten I had access to. She was at the Hilton downtown room 412 for 3 hours. I spent those 3 hours at my brother Eli's apartment drinking beer and trying not to throw my phone through his TV when the location pin didn't move for 90-minute stretches. You okay? Eli asked, handing me another beer. Perfect, I lied. Just waiting for my wife to finish her meeting with Carpet Guy. Eli raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask. He's good like that. Knows when to push and when to just sit in supportive silence while his brother's life implodes like a controlled demolition. Sunday, Clara came home cheerful, humming. She made dinner, pasta, nothing fancy, and we ate together like a normal couple. She asked about my week. I asked about hers. She told elaborate stories about clients I knew didn't exist. I nodded along like a bobblehead that had accepted its purpose in life. After dinner, I excused myself to organize some files in our home office. Instead, I opened my laptop and added to my growing folder titled How to Train Your Dragon Wife Edition, which now included 47 screenshots of texts between Clara and Carpet Guy, location data showing her at hotels during supposed work meetings, credit card statements I'd quietly obtained showing charges at restaurants we'd never been to together, voice memos she'd accidentally left in our shared cloud, including one where she and Leo discussed the timeline for their new beginning. Every piece of evidence was dated, organized, and backed up in 3 separate locations because I'd learned from watching true crime documentaries that the only thing worse than being betrayed is being betrayed and losing the evidence in a hard drive crash. By the end of week 2, I had enough material to write a book called My Wife is Committing Fraud, a love story. By the end of week 3, I perfected my performance. Oscar-worthy stuff. I could smile on command, laugh at her jokes, Pretend to believe her lies with the dedication of a method actor who'd lost his grip on reality. And every single night, I crawled into bed next to her. This woman who I'd promised forever to, who'd promised the same to me, and pretended to sleep while my mind catalogued every new betrayal like a very depressing filing system. The dog was learning tricks, all right, just not the one she expected. You know what nobody tells you about catching your wife in an affair? It's not the dramatic confrontation scenes from movies. It's not throwing plates or storming out in the rain. It's the weird mundane moments like sitting in a Starbucks at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday with your best friend Oscar, watching him hack into your wife's digital life while you pretend to look at your phone so the barista doesn't think you're planning a heist. Oscar Chuan is the kind of guy who thinks privacy laws are more like gentle suggestions than actual legislation. He works in IT for some tech company downtown that I'm 70% sure is either revolutionary or a front for something questionable. I've never been able to figure out which. He's got the look, thick framed glasses, perpetually wrinkled button-up shirts, and the energy of someone who's had 12 espressos but still seems weirdly calm about everything. If you needed someone to build you a robot or break into the Pentagon, Oscar would be your guy. He'd also probably do it while explaining why your choice of password was embarrassingly predictable. So, let me get this straight, Oscar said, not looking up from his laptop, which had more stickers on it than a middle schooler's notebook. Your wife is cheating on you with a guy she saved as carpet guy, and you want me to clone her entire cloud backup so you can build a legal case against her before she steals your house? That's the gist of it. Yeah, I said, sipping my coffee that tasted like regret and caramel syrup. And you've been pretending you don't know for how long now? 3 weeks. 66 more days to go. Oscar finally looked up, blinking behind his glasses like I just told him I was planning to swim to Antarctica. Dude, that's the most psychotic thing I've ever heard. And I once watched a guy try to debug code for 17 hours straight without sleeping. Is that a yes or no on the cloud cloning? He grinned, the kind of grin that suggested he was absolutely going to help me because this was the most entertainment he'd had since someone tried to hack his gaming account and he'd spent 3 days tracking them down just to send them a strongly worded email about their terrible encryption. Obviously, it's a yes. Give me your login credentials. I slid a piece of paper across the table with Clara's email and the password I'd figured out last week when she'd asked me to check her email for a confirmation from her dentist. The password was Leo and Clara 2024. I'm not even kidding. She might as well have named it evidence of my affair and saved everyone some time. Oscar typed for maybe 90 seconds, his fingers moving across the keyboard like he was playing a very aggressive piano concerto. Jesus Christ, her security is terrible, he muttered. She's got two-factor authentication turned off. She's using the same password for like 6 different accounts. And oh wow, she's got her location sharing on permanently. Does she want to get caught? Is this some kind of cry for help? I think she just genuinely believes I'm too stupid to check, I said, which was probably the most honest thing I'd said all week. Well, you're about to become a digital surveillance expert, my friend. Oscar's screen filled with folders, documents, and what appeared to be Clara's entire digital existence since 2019. Okay, I'm downloading everything. Photos, documents, messages, calendar entries, the works. Should take about 10 minutes. In the meantime, want to tell me why you're waiting 87 days instead of just divorcing her now like a normal person? I explained Daphne's strategy. Let Clara think she's winning. Let her commit to the fraud, gather ironclad evidence, then strike when she's most confident. Oscar nodded along like I was describing a complicated video game strategy, which I guess this kind of was, except instead of losing points, I was losing my faith in marriage and humanity. Diabolical, he said, sounding genuinely impressed. I like it. Very chess-moving. Very, let them eat cake and then present them with the bill. His laptop beeped. Done. You now have a complete backup of your wife's digital life. I've encrypted it and stored it in 3 separate secure locations. Even if she deletes everything tomorrow, you've got copies. He closed his laptop and looked at me with something that might have been sympathy or might have been morbid fascination. Want to look through it now or do you want to maintain plausible deniability for a few more hours? Now, I said, because apparently I was the kind of person who wanted to ruin his own day before lunch. We moved to Oscar's apartment, a studio that looked like Best Buy had exploded inside it, complete with 3 monitors, gaming chairs, and a very judgmental cat named Algorithm, who watched us from atop a tower of servers. Oscar pulled up Clara's photo library, and we started scrolling. Most of it was boring. Selfies, food pics, screenshots of recipes she'd never make. But then, around the 2-month-ago mark, we found it. A photo of Clara and Leo on a boat. A boat. She's wearing a white sundress. He's got his arm around her waist. And they're both holding champagne glasses with the sunset behind them like they're filming a commercial for infidelity. The caption read, "Tax-free sunsets with my favorite person. Sunrise red heart. Tax-free sunsets. Tax-free sunsets. That might be the most pretentious thing I've ever read," Oscar said. And I once read a Tech Brothers Medium article about how cryptocurrency was going to save humanity. I stared at the photo, feeling something between rage and the kind of laugh you do when you're so far past normal emotions that you've entered a new psychological dimension. She used a sunset emoji. I said she's planning to commit fraud and she used a sunset emoji. At least she's consistent with her brand. Oscar offered terrible person. Basic taste in emojis. We found more photos. Clara and Leo at restaurants I couldn't afford. Clara and Leo at what appeared to be a weekend getaway to Napa Valley during a weekend. She'd told me she was at a work conference. Clara and Leo looking at houses, actual houses, with a realtor apparently already planning where they'd live once they'd successfully stolen mine. Each photo felt like a small punch to the kidney. Not enough to knock you down, but enough that you're very aware you've been hit and you're going to feel it tomorrow. "You okay?" Oscar asked, which was nice of him considering I was actively watching evidence of my marriage dissolving in real time on his gaming monitor. "Fantastic," I lied. "Really living my best life right now." That evening, I went home and did something I've been avoiding. I talked to my neighbor Maya. Maya Rodriguez is 67, recently retired from a 40-year career as an accountant, and the kind of person who knows everyone's business in our neighborhood because she sits on her porch with wine and just observes. She's like a surveillance camera except she offers commentary and sometimes brings you cookies. I'd always liked her in a casual way when you see her kind of way, but now I needed her professionally. I found her on her porch predictably with a glass of red wine and a book she wasn't really reading because she was too busy watching Mrs. Patterson across the street try to parallel park, which was always entertaining in a slow-motion disaster kind of way. "Maya," I said walking up to her porch. "Can I ask you something about taxes?" She looked at me over her reading glasses with the expression of someone who'd been waiting her entire retirement for someone to ask her about taxes. "Is this about your wife's plan to transfer your house?" I stopped walking. "How did you, honey? I've been watching Clara meet with that man, Leo, right? For 3 months now. They're about as subtle as a car alarm at 3 a.m. plus, she asked me about property transfer tax implications 6 weeks ago. Said it was hypothetical." Maya sipped her wine. "Nothing about that conversation was hypothetical. Sit down. Let's talk." I sat. She poured me wine without asking if I wanted any, which I appreciated because I absolutely did. "Here's what she's doing," Maya said, her voice taking on the tone of someone explaining a complex math problem to a particularly slow student. "She's going to convince you to transfer the house into her name for tax benefits. She'll say it's to avoid estate taxes or capital gains or some other legitimate sounding reason. Once the house is in her name, she'll either sell it out from under you or force you out and keep it for herself and her boyfriend. Either way, you lose the house and probably a chunk of money in the process." I struggled for words. "That's incredibly illegal, right?" "Oh, extremely," Mia said cheerfully. "But it works more often than you'd think because people trust their spouses. They sign papers without reading them. They believe that their partner has their best interests at heart." She looked at me meaningfully. "But you're smarter than that, aren't you?" "I'm trying to be," I said. "I've got a lawyer. I'm gathering evidence. I'm trying to figure out how to survive the next 63 days without losing my mind." Maya patted my hand with the casual confidence of someone who'd seen this story play out 100 times. "Honey, she's not after tax benefits. She's after the whole bone. The house, the money, probably your retirement accounts if she can figure out how to access them. Women like Clara and men like Leo, they see marriage as a business transaction. And right now, you're the asset they're liquidating." I took a long drink of wine. "That's the worst thing anyone's ever said to me. And I once had a doctor tell me I had the spine posture of a question mark." She laughed, a real genuine laugh that somehow made the whole situation feel slightly less apocalyptic. "You're going to be fine," she said. "You're already 10 steps ahead of her and she doesn't even know it. Just keep playing the good husband for 2 more months. Let her think she's won." Then she made a gesture like she was pulling a rug out from under someone. Surprise. I went home that night feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Small, fragile, probably going to get crushed again. Hope, but hope nonetheless. Clara was already asleep when I got back or pretending to be, which was fine because I wasn't ready to perform for her yet. I sat in her home office, opened my laptop, and looked at all the evidence I collected. Day 23 of Operation Golden Retrieval, and the dog was learning exactly where all the bones were buried. Day 42 of Operation Golden Retrieval arrived with all the subtlety of a freight train made of red flags. I was making coffee. My new morning routine that involved pretending I enjoyed domesticity while internally screaming. When Clara walked into the kitchen with a stack of papers and the kind of smile that I'd learned meant she was about to ask for something that would benefit literally anyone except me. "Morning, babe," she said, setting the papers on the counter next to my coffee mug. "I've been thinking." Nothing good has ever followed those 3 words. "I've been thinking" is what people say right before they suggest timeshares, pyramid schemes, or in this case, updating your will so your cheating wife can cash in when you conveniently die. "We should update our wills," she continued like, she just suggested we try a new brunch spot instead of planning for my hypothetical demise. I was talking to Margaret from book club. Margaret, who definitely existed and wasn't just a cover story for her affair. And she said it's really important for married couples to have updated estate plans. You know, for tax purposes. Everything was about tax purposes lately. If I had $1 for every time Clara mentioned taxes, I could probably pay the taxes on the house she was trying to steal. "That's thoughtful," I said, because Daphne had coached me on responses that sounded agreeable without actually committing to anything. "We should definitely look into that." Her face brightened like I just agreed to donate a kidney. "Great. I already made appointments with an estate attorney for next week." Of course, she did. She'd probably already drafted the will herself. Everything goes to Clara, who is definitely not planning to murder her husband in his sleep. "No, seriously, officer. It was natural causes. He just stopped breathing coincidentally right after signing everything over to me." "Sounds perfect," I said, making a mental note to call Daphne immediately and ask if updating our wills was code for accelerating your financial murder. Clara kissed my cheek, the same cheek that was developing a permanent flinch response, and disappeared to get ready for work, which I knew meant a 10 a.m. coffee date with Leo because I checked her calendar while she was in the shower. They were meeting at that pretentious place downtown that serves $8 lattes and calls itself a coffee collective, like caffeine, is a communist movement. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table and updated my journal. A leather notebook I bought specifically for documenting my descent into whatever psychological state I currently occupied. The entry for day 42 read: "Wife still actively planning my downfall. Now wants to update wills. Romantic gesture level. Mortician. Husband still playing role of oblivious golden retriever. Getting really good at fetch. Someone should give me a treat. Preferably alcohol. Day 53 brought a new circle of hell. Leo invited me to golf." The text came through at 800 a.m. "Hey man, wanna hit the link Saturday? Been meaning to catch up." I stared at my phone like it had just asked me to join a cult. Leo wanted to play golf with me. The man who was sleeping with my wife, planning to steal my house, and had probably never paid for his own coffee in his entire smug existence, wanted to spend 4 hours with me on a golf course pretending we were buddies. I showed the text to Oscar over lunch at a taco truck that parked near his office. He read it, looked at me, and said, "You're going to say yes, aren't you? Obviously, you're insane." "I'm thorough." I corrected. "There's a difference. Besides, Daphne said I should act normal, and normal me would probably say yes because I'm a doormat who doesn't know his wife's boyfriend is asking him to golf." Oscar bit into his taco, thinking, okay, but counterpoint, what if he murders you on the golf course? Like, makes it look like an accident. Oops. Drove the golf cart off a cliff. So sad. "Here's your house, Clara." That's actually a solid plan. I admit it. But I don't think Leo's that smart. He saved himself as carpet guy in my wife's phone. That's not the work of a criminal mastermind. Saturday came. I met Leo at the country club he belonged to, because of course he belonged to a country club. The kind of place where everyone wore pastel colors and talked about their stock portfolios between shots. Leo was waiting at the first tee, looking like a Ralph Lauren ad had come to life. Polo shirt, khaki shorts, one of those visors that only looked good on professional golfers. And somehow everyone still wears them. "Hey buddy." He clapped me on the shoulder like we were old friends and not 2 guys sharing the same woman without one of us knowing about it. "Great day for golf, right?" "Perfect," I said, gripping my golf club a little too tightly and imagining alternative uses for it. That definitely weren't Uzi approved. We played 18 holes. 18 holes. That's approximately 4 hours of listening to Leo talk about himself, which felt like a masterclass in human narcissism. He bragged about his consulting business, his investment portfolio, his life philosophy, and his commitment to living authentically, which apparently meant sleeping with other people's wives while discussing ethics. "You know what I believe?" he said on the 7th hole, lining up a putt he'd definitely miss. "I believe in radical honesty. People should just say what they feel, you know. No games, no pretending. The irony was so thick, I could have used it as a golf ball. This man was lecturing me about honesty while actively participating in the longest con of my adult life, and I had to stand there nodding like he was Aristotle instead of a walking scales commercial. That's a great philosophy, I said. Really admirable. He missed the putt by 3 feet. By the 15th hole, he was telling me about how important it was to invest in relationships and build genuine connections. And I was seriously considering whether prison time for assault with a golf club would be worth it. Probably not, but the thought was comforting. We finished the round. He won by 6 strokes because apparently God has a sick sense of humor and shook hands like civilized men who weren't enemies. We should do this more often, Leo said. It's good to have solid guy friends, you know. Absolutely, I agreed. Nothing better than male bonding. I drove home, gripping my steering wheel and practicing the deep breathing exercises my therapist had taught me before I'd stopped going to therapy because I couldn't afford the co-pays anymore after Clara redecorated our living room. Day 60 brought the moment I'd been dreading and somehow also expecting. Clara called me Leo in bed. We weren't even doing anything, just lying there watching some Netflix show about baking that neither of us cared about. She was scrolling through her phone, probably texting the actual Leo about how boring her fake life with her husband was. And I was pretending to care about whether someone's Sule would rise. Leo, can you turn up the volume? She said, not even looking up from her phone. The room went silent. Not the peaceful kind of silent. The kind of silent that happens right before someone crashes a car or drops an expensive plate. The kind of silent that is wait. I could have confronted her. Could have said, excuse me, did you just call me your boyfriend's name? Could have started the whole endgame right there. Day 60 ahead of schedule. Burned the whole plan because my pride couldn't take another second. Instead, I turned up the volume, didn't say a word, just reached for the remote, increased the volume by 3 notches, and went back to watching some guy stress about buttercream frosting. Clara didn't even notice, didn't catch her mistake, just kept scrolling through her phone, completely oblivious that she'd just called her husband by her lover's name, and he pretended not to hear it. Therapists probably have a term for that kind of restraint. I call it survival. That night, I added to my journal. Day 60. Wife called me Leo. Pretended not to hear it. This is fine. Everything is fine. I'm fine. The dog is fine. We're all fine. Only 27 days until this nightmare ends, and I can stop pretending I didn't hear my wife say another man's name in our bed. Cool, 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 cool. The entries got more unhinged as the days went on. Day 61. Wife still evil. Husband still pretending to be dumb. Cat still judging everyone. Mr. Whiskers might be the only honest one in this house. Day 64. Made her favorite dinner. She said I was so thoughtful. I am not thoughtful. I am documenting. There's a difference. Day 67. Leo texted her, miss your smile. And she blushed. Blushed. I was sitting right there. This is my life now. Day 70. 17 days left. 17 days until I can stop acting like a man who enjoys his own humiliation. 17 days until Clara learns that this dog has teeth. The countdown wasn't just about divorce anymore. It was about sanity, about how long a person could maintain a performance before they either won an Oscar or had a complete psychological breakdown in a Costco parking lot. I was determined to make it to day 87, even if it killed me, which given Clara's interest in updating our wills, was becoming a legitimate concern. You ever see those nature documentaries where the prey animal pretends to be injured to lure the predator closer? That's what I became around day 72. Except instead of limping dramatically across the savannah, I was leaving my phone unlocked on the kitchen counter with Google searches like how to transfer house title between spouses for tax benefits open in Safari. It was almost too easy. Embarrassingly easy. The kind of easy that made me wonder if Clara had always been this predictable or if I'd just never paid attention before. Probably both. Marriage has a way of making you complacent. Like you're so comfortable you stop noticing when your partner starts acting like a Bond villain with a worse disguise. I'd left my phone there deliberately, screen facing up, brightness at maximum, practically glowing like a beacon of stupidity while I went to grab the mail. I was actually standing in the hallway watching through the crack in the door like some kind of suburban spy who'd peaked in mediocrity. Clara walked into the kitchen, saw the phone, did that thing where she looked around to make sure no one was watching, which was hilarious because I was literally watching her. Then she picked it up. Her face went through this whole journey of emotions. Curiosity, excitement, satisfaction, and finally that smug little smile that I'd started to recognize as her "I'm getting away with it" expression. She took a photo of my search history with her own phone. Actually photographed the evidence of my supposed ignorance like she was documenting an archaeological discovery. Found it. Dr. Jones. The ancient ruins of my husband's brain cell. She put my phone back, smoothed her hair, and went back to whatever she was doing like she hadn't just fallen for bait. So obvious label. I waited 30 seconds, walked back into the kitchen and said, "Hey babe, found anything interesting?" She jumped slightly. Guilty conscience is a hell of a drug, then recovered with that practiced smile. "Nope, just making tea. Want some?" "Sure," I said, sitting down at the counter and watching her pour hot water like she was performing surgery. I've been doing some research actually about property transfers for tax purposes. I swear I saw her pupils dilate like a shark that just smelled blood in the water. "Oh yeah, apparently married couples can transfer property between each other and avoid certain taxes. Could save us a lot of money." I paused for effect, playing the role of helpful husband who definitely doesn't know he's being scammed. I was thinking we should talk to our accountant about it. She practically vibrated with excitement. "That's such a good idea. You're so smart to think of that." The audacity, the sheer unfiltered audacity of calling me smart for falling into her trap. It was like watching a cartoon villain compliment the hero for walking into their obvious snare. "Thanks," I said, accepting the tea she handed me. "I just want to make sure we're doing everything we can to optimize our finances, for our future." "Our future," she repeated. And the way she said it made it clear she was thinking about a future that involved Leo's expensive boat and my money. She kissed my cheek, the famous betrayal cheek, which was developing calluses at this point, and said, "You're such a good man." I smiled, looked her right in her lying eyes, and said in the most sincere voice I could manage, "Yeah, I get that a lot from people who are about to rob me blind." Her face froze for half a second. This micro expression of panic before she laughed it off like I'd made a joke. "You're so funny," she said, walking away. Funny, right? Hilarious. I was basically a one-man comedy show titled "Watch This Idiot Pretend He Doesn't Know His Life Is Falling Apart." Streaming now on the Mental Breakdown Network. That afternoon, I had a meeting with Daphne at her office. She'd requested I come in for what she called a strategy session, which sounded official and important and made me feel like I was planning a military operation instead of just trying to divorce my wife without losing everything I owned. Her office still smelled like expensive leather and the tears of cheating spouses. She sat behind her desk looking like she'd already won my case and was just waiting for everyone else to catch up. "So," she said, pulling out a folder that had gotten noticeably thicker since our first meeting. "Your wife is taking the bait. Like a starving fish at an all-you-can-eat buffet," I confirmed. "Good. Here's what we're going to do." She laid out several documents on her desk with the precision of someone dealing cards. "You're not going to sign anything, but you're going to let her believe you will. You're going to string this along until day 87. Let her commit to the fraud completely. Let her think she's won. Then we hit her with divorce papers, evidence of the affair, documentation of attempted fraud, and a property settlement that ensures you keep everything. Can we do that legally? Not only can we do it, we're going to do it. She's the one committing fraud. You're just defending yourself." Daphne leaned forward, and I understood why her reviews called her a shark. "While she's planning to steal your house, we're going to make sure she leaves this marriage with nothing but regret and possibly legal fees." I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Genuine joy. The kind of joy you get when you realize the universe might actually have a sense of justice. Even if it takes 3 months and a lawyer who charges enough per hour to feed a small village. "What do I need to do?" I asked. "Keep playing dumb. But also, and this is important, start protecting your assets now. Open a new bank account she doesn't know about. Transfer funds gradually so she doesn't notice. We're also going to quietly list your house for conditional sale under your name only." "Can I do that?" "It's marital property. You're both on the deed. Either spouse can list it. She's planning to transfer it into her name fraudulently. We're going to sell it legitimately and ensure you get your share. It's called being proactive." She smiled. Think of it as offensive defense. Over the next week, I became a financial ninja. Opened a new checking account at a different bank across town. Started transferring small amounts. $200 here, $500 there. Nothing big enough to trigger alerts, but enough that by day 87, I'd have a safety net she couldn't touch. I even opened a separate savings account and moved half our emergency fund into it. Because if this wasn't an emergency, I didn't know what was. I contacted a real estate agent named Marcus, recommended by Daphne naturally, who agreed to list our house discreetly. Conditional sale, he explained over the phone, means it won't go on the market officially until you give the word, but we'll have all the paperwork ready, professional photos taken, the whole 9 yards. When you're ready to pull the trigger, We can have it listed within hours. How soon can we start? I asked. I can have a photographer there tomorrow if the wife won't be home. Clara had a late client meeting code for afternoon delight with Leo scheduled for the next day. Tomorrow works perfectly. The photographer came, took pictures of every room, made our house look like something from a magazine instead of the crime scene of a dying marriage. He was done in 90 minutes. Clara never knew. Meanwhile, Clara and Leo kept their text thread going like they were writing the world's most predictable romance novel. Oscar had set up a system where their messages automatically forwarded to a secure server, so I had real-time updates on their stupidity. Carpet guy. Can't wait until we don't have to hide anymore. Just a few more weeks. Clara, I know. He's already researching property transfers. This is going to be so easy. Carpet guy, you sure he's not suspicious? Clara, please. He's like a golden retriever. Loyal, trusting, and not smart enough to see what's right in front of him. I read that message while sitting in my car outside a grocery store, and I laughed. Actually laughed out loud like a person who'd finally lost it. Some lady walking past with her shopping cart looked at me like I was about to either rob the place or start preaching about aliens. I texted Oscar. They called me a golden retriever again. Oscar, at least they're consistent. Me. 20 days until this retriever bites back. Oscar, that's the spirit. Want to get tacos later? Me? Obviously. Day 80 rolled around and Clara was practically glowing. She hummed while cooking. Actual humming like a Disney princess, except the song was about fraud instead of true love. She texted Leo with emojis that would make a teenager cringe. Heart eyes, champagne bottles, that little house emoji that I'm pretty sure represented my house they were planning to steal. I started giving everyone in this nightmare pet names in my head just to maintain my sanity. Clara, CEO of Bad Decisions. Leo, Mr. Tax Benefit, or alternatively that carpet guy. Daphne, Angel of Legal Death. Oscar, Tech Wizard of Doom. Maya, Wine Mom Oracle. Mr. Whiskers, the only honest soul in this house. I even practiced my confrontation speech in the bathroom mirror, which is definitely something stable people do. Surprise. I'm not a dog. I'm the owner of the house, the account, and your complete downfall. No, too dramatic. Hey, Clara, remember how you thought I was stupid? Plot twist. I'm not too casual. Woof woof, the dog learned new tricks. Perfect. Unhinged, but perfect. Day 8. 7 was 1 week away. 7 days until I could stop pretending. 7 days until Clara and Leo's new life became a new nightmare. 7 days until the golden retriever finally stopped fetching and started fighting back. I could almost taste the freedom. It tasted like vindication and probably some really expensive whiskey I was going to buy myself as a congrats on not getting defrauded present. One more week, just one more week of being the good dumb loyal husband. Then the performance would end and the real show would begin. Day 80 felt different. Like when you're watching a horror movie and you know the jump scare is coming, but you still can't look away. Except in this version, I was both the audience and the guy about to jump out from behind the door. And Clara was the unsuspecting teenager who thought she was winning the game. She woke up that morning practically radiating victory. I'm talking full blown. I've already won energy. She made breakfast, actual breakfast, not her usual grab a protein bar and run routine, and hummed while doing it. The humming was what really got me. It was this cheerful off-key melody that sounded like what I imagined Disney villains hum while plotting in their lairs. Except instead of a castle, it's a suburban kitchen with granite countertops we'd gone into debt to afford. What's got you in such a good mood? I asked. Playing my role as oblivious husband number 2847 in the long-running series called My Life is a Joke. Oh, nothing specific, she said. Flipping a pancake with the confidence of someone who thought they'd successfully con their spouse. Just feeling grateful, you know? We have such a good life together. Together. She used that word like it meant something, like we were actually a team instead of a magician and her assistant. Except the assistant didn't know the magic trick involved making his assets disappear. We do. I agreed, pouring syrup on my pancakes that I absolutely did not want to eat. I'm lucky to have you. The words tasted worse than the time I accidentally drank spoiled milk, but I said them with a smile that I perfected over 80 days of advanced lying. I should have gotten a LinkedIn certification in deception by now. Skills: Microsoft Excel project management, pretending my wife isn't committing fraud, expert level. After breakfast, I checked my phone and saw she'd sent Leo a text at 6:47 a.m. before I'd even woken up. The message had auto-forwarded to my secret email courtesy of Oscar's technical wizardry and complete disregard for federal privacy laws. Clara, 7 more days. I can barely contain myself. This is actually happening. Perfect guy. I know, baby. Soon we'll be in our new place living our real life. No more pretending. No more pretending. The irony was so thick I could have used it to pave a driveway. They were talking about not pretending while I'd been running the longest con of my life for almost 3 months. If there was an Olympic sport for emotional deception, I'd be standing on a podium wearing gold. Day 81, Clara started talking about our future plans with the enthusiasm of someone who'd already mentally moved into a different house with a different man. We were having dinner, takeout Chinese, because she was too excited about life to cook. And she started describing this cabin in Lake Tahoe she'd found online. Wouldn't it be amazing to have a vacation home? She said, showing me pictures on her phone of a cabin that probably cost more than our current mortgage. We could go there on weekends, really disconnect from everything. By we, she meant her and Leo. By disconnect, she meant disconnect me from my money and property. I nodded along like a dashboard bobblehead, saying things like, that sounds nice and we should definitely look into that. While internally screaming into the void that used to be my faith in humanity. Day 82, she came home with new luggage, expensive luggage, the kind you buy when you're planning a significant trip, or in her case, a whole new life. She said it was on sale, which was Clara's go-to excuse for any purchase she didn't want to justify. That woman could buy a yacht and claim it was on sale like that made it reasonable. Planning a trip? I asked innocently, watching her wheel the pristine suitcases into our bedroom. Oh, just thought we could use an upgrade, she said. Our old luggage is falling apart. Our old luggage was fine. We'd used it maybe 4 times in the past year, but sure, we needed new luggage for the trip she was planning without me to the life she was building with someone else using the money she was planning to steal. Totally reasonable. Nothing suspicious here. Day 83 brought the most absurd development yet. Clara asked if I'd be okay with her taking a girls' trip the weekend after our tax meeting. Said she needed time to decompress with friends. Of course, I said, because what else was I going to say? No, honey. You can't go on your fake girls' trip that's actually a romantic getaway with your boyfriend to celebrate successfully committing fraud. You're the best, she said, kissing me on the lips this time instead of the cheek promotion. I'd moved from cheek kiss status to lip kiss status, probably because she was feeling generous about her impending victory. I smiled through it, went to the bathroom, brushed my teeth for 5 minutes straight, and then texted Daphne. She's planning a trip for right after the tax meeting. A girls' trip. Daphne responded within 30 seconds. Lol. Document everything. This is going to be the easiest case I've ever won. Day 84, Sunday. Clara spent 3 hours on the phone with someone she claimed was her mother. I knew it wasn't her mother because her mother has a very specific ringtone. Some country song about trucks that drives me insane, and this call came through without any ringtone at all. FaceTime. She was FaceTiming someone while locked in our bedroom. When she came out, she looked flushed and happy, like someone who'd just had phone sex or discussed real estate fraud in detail, possibly both. The beautiful thing about Clara's affair was how spectacularly bad she was at hiding it. It was like watching someone try to conceal an elephant by throwing a napkin over it. Everything okay? I asked. Great, she said too enthusiastically. Mom says hi. Tell her I said hi back. I replied knowing full well her mom was probably at church doing her Sunday routine and had no idea her daughter was speedrunning the 7 deadly sins. Day 85, I had my final meeting with Daphne. We sat in her office, which I'd come to think of as my second home. If your home was a place where you plotted legal warfare and went over every single detail of the plan, tomorrow, you'll act completely normal, she instructed, sliding a folder across her desk. Wednesday morning, day 87, Clara will expect you both to go to the tax office. Instead, you'll have already moved your essential belongings to your brother's place. At 9 a.m., you'll be here signing the final divorce documents. At 11 a.m., we'll serve her. Serve her divorce papers at your house with a process server who's very good at his job and has seen everything. She smiled. By the time she realizes what's happening, the house will be listed, your assets will be protected, and she'll be facing the reality that her plan failed spectacularly. What about Leo? I took the liberty of having someone compile information on his business practices. Turns out consulting is generous. He's been involved in several questionable financial schemes. If your wife wants to tie her life to that sinking ship, that's her choice, but she won't be doing it with your money. I left Daphne's office feeling something between terror and exhilaration. Like someone who just jumped out of a plane and wasn't sure if the parachute was going to open, but was committed to the fall anyway. Day 86. The day before everything, Clara was insufferable. She cleaned the house top to bottom, which she never did. She was literally humming while vacuuming, like some kind of deranged housewife from a 1950s commercial, except the product she was selling was betrayal. Big day tomorrow, she said over dinner, which she'd actually cooked. Smone and asparagus, my favorite, which felt like a condemned man's last meal, except I was the one who'd built the gallows. Yeah, I said. Really big day. She had no idea how right she was. No clue that big day didn't mean day we commit fraud together, but rather day your entire scheme collapses like a house of cards in a hurricane. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed next to Clara, who slept peacefully, probably dreaming about lake houses and freedom from her stupid husband, and stared at the ceiling, counting down the hours. At 2 a.m., I got up, went to the kitchen, and made a cup of coffee I didn't need. Mr. Whiskers found me there, sitting at the counter in the dark like a movie villain monologuing to nobody. He jumped up next to me, meowed once, probably asking what the hell I was doing, and I scratched behind his ears. Tomorrow, I told him, the dog finally bites back. He purred, either in approval or because cats don't understand English, and he just liked being petted. Either way, it felt like support. I pulled out my phone and looked at all the evidence I compiled. 86 days worth of screenshots, recordings, documents, bank statements, location data, text messages. It was beautiful in a devastating sort of way. A masterpiece of betrayal, fully documented, ready to be presented in court. I'd started this journey thinking I was a victim, a stupid, trusting husband who'd gotten played. But somewhere around day 40, I'd realized something. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the hunter. The prey had learned to hunt back. And tomorrow was hunting season. At 6 a.m., Clara's alarm went off. She bounced out of bed with energy I hadn't seen since our honeymoon, back when she was still pretending to love me for real instead of strategically. Big day, she announced like we were going to Disneyland and not to commit financial crimes. Huge, I agreed, smiling my practice smile. Absolutely huge. She had no idea. Day 87 started with Clara making avocado toast, which felt like the universe had developed a sense of irony so advanced it should have been studied by scientists. Here was my wife preparing the most millennial breakfast possible, humming some pop song about love and happiness, completely unaware that in approximately 4 hours, her entire world was going to detonate like a financial atomic bomb. Don't forget the tax meeting at 2, she called out from the kitchen, her voice practically singing with anticipation. I've got all the paperwork ready. This is going to be so good for us. Wouldn't dream of missing it, I said, tying my shoes with the calm of a man who'd spent 86 days preparing for this exact moment. My hands weren't even shaking. Somewhere along this journey, I'd transformed from anxious husband to cold-blooded revenge planner. And honestly, the career change suited me. Clara brought me the avocado toast with a smile that probably looked loving to anyone who wasn't aware she'd been planning to commit fraud. You're going to love what this does for our future, she said, and I had to physically restrain myself from laughing. I'm sure I will, I replied, biting into toast that tasted like vindication with a hint of sea salt. At 9 a.m. sharp, while Clara was in the shower preparing for what she thought would be her victory lap, I texted my brother Eli. I'm heading over now. He responded immediately. Doors unlocked, beers in the fridge. Can't wait to hear how this goes. I'd already moved most of my important stuff to Eli's apartment over the past week. Clothes, documents, my grandfather's watch, Mr. Whisker's favorite toys because yes, I was keeping the cat. I'd been doing it gradually, taking bags in my car trunk, and dropping them off while Clara was at her late client meetings. She never noticed because she was too busy planning her new life to pay attention to the old one falling apart. The only things left in the house were furniture, kitchen stuff, and Clara's mountain of lies. She could keep the furniture. I'd memorized every text message. At 9:47 a.m., I walked into Daphne's office for the last time as a married man. She was waiting with a stack of documents that looked like they could end a small government. And she had that shark smile that I'd learned to associate with imminent legal destruction. Ready? She asked. I've been ready since day one, I said. Let's do this. I signed 6 documents in total. Divorce papers, asset protection agreements, a restraining order if necessary. Daphne's idea said it was standard procedure for cases involving fraud, property settlement agreements that ensured the house would be sold and I'd get my fair share. A statement for the police just in case Clara decided to escalate things legally. Each signature felt like freedom, like I was autographing my own Emancipation Proclamation, except instead of freeing slaves, I was freeing myself from a woman who'd called me a dog and meant it as an insult. The process server will deliver these to her at 100 p.m. Daphne explained right before her fake tax meeting. I've also taken the liberty of having someone alert Leo simultaneously just so they can panic together. It's more efficient. You're an artist, I told her. I'm expensive, she corrected. But yes, also an artist. By 11 a.m., I was at Eli's apartment sitting on his couch that smelled like bachelor pad and poor life choices, watching the clock like it held the secrets to the universe. Eli handed me a beer even though it wasn't even noon because some moments transcend appropriate drinking hours. You really did it, he said, sounding somewhere between impressed and concerned for my mental health. 87 days of playing dumb. That's commitment or insanity, I offered. Probably both. What are you going to say to her? I pulled out my phone, opened my notes app, and showed him the message I drafted at 3 a.m. when I couldn't sleep. I know about you and Leo. I've known for 87 days. Been playing the perfect dog while you plan to steal my house. Don't bother showing up to the tax office. Those aren't transfer papers you're about to sign. They're divorce papers. The house is being sold. The accounts are protected. And just so we're clear, woof. Eli read it, looked at me, and started laughing. Woof. You're ending it with woof. I'm reclaiming the dog metaphor. I explained. It's symbolic. It's unhinged. He corrected. I love it. At 1:27 p.m., I sent 2 text messages that had taken 87 days to write. To Clara, I know about you and Leo. I've known for 87 days. Been playing the perfect dog while you plan to steal my house. Don't bother showing up to the tax office. Those aren't transfer papers. They're divorce papers. The house is being sold. The accounts are protected. And just so we're clear, woof to Leo, hope the kennel's comfy. My lawyer will be in touch about your role in the attempted fraud. Enjoy your new life with Clara. She's all yours. You deserve each other. Then I turned off my phone. Just powered it down completely because I didn't want to hear the explosion. I wanted to enjoy lunch with my brother in peace while Clara and Leo's world collapsed like a controlled demolition. How do you feel? Eli asked, ordering us burgers from some delivery app that was probably stealing our data but had excellent fries. Honestly, I took a long drink of beer. I feel free like someone just removed a backpack full of rocks I've been carrying for 3 years or maybe longer. I don't know when exactly our marriage died, but it's been a corpse for a while and I've been dragging it around pretending it was still alive. That's dark, man. It's been a dark 87 days. We ate burgers, watched basketball. Eli told me about his dating disasters, which made my marriage implosion seem almost reasonable by comparison. At some point, Mr. Whiskers emerged from the bedroom where I'd set up his stuff, judged both of us silently, and went back to sleep. Around 7 p.m., I finally turned my phone back on. The screen lit up like Times Square on New Year's Eve. Notifications flooded in so fast, my phone actually lagged. Text messages, missed calls, voicemails, emails, even a Facebook message from Clara's mother asking if I was okay. 142 missed calls, 142, 73 text messages, 19 voicemails. I scrolled through the messages watching Clara's emotional journey in real time. 1:32 p.m. What are you talking about? Call me. 1:45 p.m. This isn't funny. Where are you? 2:03 p.m. A process server just came to the house. 2:15 p.m. Are you serious right now? We need to talk. 2:47 p.m. Please, let's just talk about this. I can explain everything. 3:30 p.m. You're making a huge mistake. We can work this out. 4:15 p.m. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Please, can we talk? 5:03 p.m. You can't just throw away our marriage like this. 6:20 p.m. Fine, be that way. You're going to regret this. 6:45 p.m. I'm sorry, okay? I'm so sorry. Please call me. The voicemails range from angry to desperate to bargaining to more anger to crying. I listened to exactly one. The last one she'd left at 6:52 p.m. where she was crying so hard I could barely understand her. Please, she sobbed. Please just talk to me. We can fix this. I love you. I made a mistake. Please don't do this. Please. I deleted it. Leo had sent messages, too, trying to play the reasonable card. Bro, this isn't what it looks like. Let's talk, Monto man. Clara was confused. Nothing happened. You're making this worse than it is. I responded to exactly one message. Leo's last one where he'd written, "You're going to ruin her life over a misunderstanding." My response, "No, I'm saving mine from fraud." Big difference. Enjoy the carpet business. Then I blocked both of them. Eli watched me handle my phone with the detached calm of someone who'd already processed all their emotions over the past 3 months. You really not going to talk to her? What's there to say? I asked. I spent 87 days documenting every lie, every plan to steal from me, every laugh at my expense. What conversation fixes that? What words make I was going to commit fraud and steal your house acceptable? Fair point. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Not because I was happy. I wasn't sure I knew what happy felt like anymore, but because I was done. Done pretending. Done performing. Done being the loyal dog who didn't realize his owner had been training him for the pound. The next morning, I woke up in Eli's spare room, made coffee, and checked my phone one last time. Clara had sent one final message at 3:47 a.m. I never meant to hurt you. I don't know what happened. I'm sorry. I know you won't believe me, but I am. I hope someday you can forgive me. I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me, the part that had loved her once, that had stood at an altar and meant those vows, wanted to believe her, wanted to think this was all a terrible mistake that could somehow be fixed. But then I remember day one, hearing her laugh about calling me a dog, hearing her plot with Leo to steal everything I'd worked for. The 86 days after that where she'd smiled to my face while sharpening knives for my back. I deleted the message, opened my email, started composing a response to Daphne. Let's move forward with everything. No settlements, no negotiations. I want this done. The dog had learned new tricks. All right. And the first trick was knowing when to walk away. The thing about consequences is that they're always more entertaining when they're happening to someone else. For the next 6 hours after turning my phone back on, I got a front row seat to the Clara and Leo disaster show. And let me tell you, it was better than anything Netflix has produced in the last 5 years. My phone kept buzzing like it had developed a nervous disorder. Every notification was another desperate attempt at damage control from people who'd spent 3 months thinking I was too stupid to notice my own life being stolen. The audacity of thinking I'd just answer their calls after 87 days of being treated like an obedient house pet was almost impressive. Almost. Clara called 17 more times throughout the evening. I know because my phone kept the tally like it was documenting a hostage situation, which in a way I guess it was, except the hostage had already escaped and the kidnappers were panicking about their empty ransom demands. Leo sent increasingly unhinged messages that devolved from "let's talk this out like adults" to "you're ruining everything" to "this is illegal what you're doing," which was rich coming from a guy who'd been conspiring to commit real estate fraud. That's like a bank robber calling the cops because someone stole his getaway car. The lack of self-awareness was almost artistic. But the real entertainment came from Clara's friends, the mysterious book club ladies who may or may not have actually existed. Suddenly, my phone was getting calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Women with names like Jennifer and Stephanie and Ashley. All of them wanting to know what happened and whether I was being reasonable about this. One particularly bold specimen named Trish, who I'd met exactly once at a dinner party where she'd talked about essential oils for 45 minutes, actually left me a voicemail saying, "Clara made a mistake, but marriage is about forgiveness. You're being really immature about this." I saved that voicemail, not to respond to, but because someday when I needed to remember why I did this, I could listen to a stranger call me immature for refusing to accept fraud and infidelity. Really put things in perspective. Day 88 arrived with slightly fewer emergency contacts, but significantly more drama. Clara had apparently told everyone we knew, and I mean everyone, her version of events, which I'm sure painted her as the victim of a husband who overreacted to her getting close to an old friend. My mom called. That was fun. She'd heard from Clara's mom that we were getting divorced, and she wanted the real story because Clara seemed very upset and confused. The real story I told my mother while stress-eating cereal at Eli's kitchen counter is that Clara and her ex-boyfriend were planning to trick me into signing over our house so they could start a new life together. I found out, documented everything for 87 days, and filed for divorce. That's the real story. There was a long pause on the other end. Then, "Oh well, that's different than what Linda said." Linda was Clara's mom. Sweet woman, made excellent casseroles. Probably had no idea her daughter had been running a con that would make a used car salesman proud. "Yeah, I imagine it is," I said. "Do you need anything?" Mom asked her, voice shifting from confused to protective mom mode. "Should I come over?" "I'm good, Mom. I'm at Eli's. I've got a lawyer. I'm handling it." "Okay, but honey, I'm proud of you." That hit differently than I expected. I'd spent 3 months thinking I was being pathetic, playing dumb, gathering evidence, pretending everything was fine while dying inside. But hearing my mom say she was proud made me realize that maybe what I'd done wasn't pathetic at all. Maybe it was strategic. Maybe it was smart. Maybe the dog had been smarter than the masters all along. Day 89, I finally agreed to meet Claire in person. Not because I wanted to, but because Daphne suggested it might be useful to hear what she had to say for closure purposes, which I think was lawyer speak for let her incriminate herself some more while you record the conversation. We met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory, public enough that she couldn't cause a scene without everyone in a 3-block radius witnessing it. I got there early, ordered a black coffee I didn't plan on drinking, and sat at a table by the window where I could see her arrive. She showed up at 2:03 p.m. 3 minutes late, which was Clara's version of being on time. She looked wrecked. I don't say that with satisfaction or cruelty. She genuinely looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. Hair pulled back in a messy bun, no makeup, wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt that I was 90% sure was one of mine that she'd claimed disappeared in the laundry. She sat down across from me without ordering anything. And for a long moment, we just stared at each other like two people who'd once known everything about each other and now knew nothing at all. "Thanks for meeting me," she said finally, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "You've got 10 minutes, I replied, checking my phone for effect. "My lawyer said I should hear you out, so I'm hearing you out." "I made a mistake," she started, and I almost laughed because that was the understatement of the century. I got confused. Things with us had been distant and Leo was there and he listened and I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly. "You weren't thinking clearly for 3 months. I asked because that's how long you and Carpet Guy were planning to steal my house." She flinched at that. "I wasn't going to steal it. It was just Leo said it would be better for taxes if Leo is a fraud." I interrupted. "My lawyer looked into him. He's been running schemes like this for years. You weren't special, Clara. You were just his next mark. Or maybe you were partners. I haven't decided which is worse." Her eyes filled with tears which might have worked on me 3 months ago. Now they just looked like special effects in a bad performance. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said. "I swear. I fell in love with someone else. That doesn't make me a bad person." "No," I agreed. "Falling in love with someone else doesn't make you a bad person. Falling in love with someone else while married, planning to commit fraud, calling your husband a dog, and laughing about how easy he'd be to manipulate. That makes you a bad person." The love part was just the excuse. She opened her mouth to respond, but I wasn't done. "I spent 87 days pretending I didn't know." I continued, keeping my voice level because I practiced this in my head roughly 10,000 times. 87 days making you breakfast, folding your laundry, listening to you lie about book club and late meetings. I documented every lie, every text message, every location ping when you were at hotels with Leo. I have evidence that would make a prosecutor weep with joy. So don't sit here and tell me this was a mistake or that you weren't thinking clearly. You thought plenty clearly. You just thought I was too stupid to notice." Clara was crying now. Real tears, messy and desperate. "Please," she said, "please, can we try therapy, marriage counseling, something? We've been together for 5 years. That has to count for something." I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. Daphne had prepared it for me, a copy of the property documents showing the conditional sale contract for our house, my name only, with a potential closing date 6 weeks out. I slid it across the table. "See this? This is our house, the one you were planning to transfer into your name. It's being sold. I own 100%. You own regret." She stared at the documents like they were written in a foreign language. "You can't. We both own the house. You can't sell it without me. Actually, I can list it. And once the divorce is finalized, which will be soon because you committed fraud, you'll get exactly what you deserve from the sale." I leaned forward, which according to my lawyer is significantly less than you were hoping for. "This isn't fair," she said, her voice rising. People at nearby tables were starting to glance over. "You can't just punish me forever because I made a mistake." "I'm not punishing you forever," I said calmly. "I'm divorcing you. There's a difference. You wanted a new life with Leo. Congratulations. You're getting it. Just not with my house and my money funding it." I stood up, leaving my untouched coffee on the table like the metaphor. It was bitter, cold, and unwanted. "Wait," Clara said, reaching for my hand. I pulled back before she could touch me. "Please, I love you. I know I messed up, but I love you. We can fix this." I looked at her, really looked at her, and tried to find the woman I'd married. The one who'd laughed at my jokes and danced in our kitchen and promised me forever. She was gone. Maybe she'd never existed. Maybe I'd just been in love with a performance. And the real Clara was the one sitting here crying because her plan had failed. "No," I said simply, "we can't because I don't love you anymore. I stopped loving you somewhere around day 30 when I realized you were never going to tell me the truth. When I understood that you saw me as an obstacle instead of a partner, you killed whatever we had. I'm just signing the death certificate." I walked out of that coffee shop with my head up and my conscience clear. Behind me, I could hear Clara crying, probably waiting for me to turn around and come back like I always did. But the dog had learned the most important trick of all, knowing when to stay gone. 2 months later, the divorce was finalized on a Tuesday, which felt poetic considering the whole nightmare started on a Tuesday. Life has a sixth sense of symmetry like that. Clara and Leo ended up renting a sad little 2-bedroom condo near a strip mall that housed a discount gym and a dry cleaner that always smelled like burnt fabric. Their dream house with tax-free sunsets sold to a nice couple from Portland who paid asking price and didn't commit fraud to afford it. Their grand new life together turned out Leo had debts nobody knew about and Clara's consulting income mysteriously disappeared once she couldn't use my credentials anymore. Shocking, I know. I moved into a modest 1-bedroom apartment in a quieter neighborhood. Nothing fancy. No granite countertops or mid-century modern furniture that costs more than a car payment, but it was mine. Actually, mine. No shared assets, no hidden agendas, just a lease with my name on it and peace so tangible I could taste it. Best decision I made. Getting a dog, a real one this time. I named him Justice because I'm apparently that petty and he's perfect. A golden retriever who's loyal without being stupid about it, which felt like personal growth for both of us. Every morning, Justice and I jog past Clara's old Pilates studio. He always stops at the corner to sniff around, and I like to think he smells poetic irony mixed with overpriced athleisure. Sometimes I see her through the window stretching with the same women who called me immature for not accepting betrayal. I don't wave, neither does she. Last week, an envelope arrived from Clara. No return address, but I recognized her handwriting. The same handwriting that used to write I love you on post-it notes she'd leave around the house. Inside was a single piece of paper. Can we talk? I looked at Justice who was chewing a toy shaped like a newspaper. What do you think, boy? Should we respond? He dropped the toy, tilted his head, and I swear he looked like he was considering it. Then I did what any self-respecting free man would do. I took a photo of Justice and me on our morning run, captioned it, "Sorry, this dog learned new tricks," and posted it on social media for the first time in months. Because after 87 days of playing the perfect fool, I'd finally become what Clara never expected, a free man with a killer sense of humor, a loyal dog, and zero regrets. Turns out, this golden retriever knew exactly when to stop fetching and start living.
That brings this story to an end, and that one was definitely a wild ride. Let me know what you think in the comments. Now, let's move into the next story, titled,
My ex-wife's new husband showed up at our Christmas dinner, calling me a broke loser and throwing wine at me. My ex-wife just laughed. He had no idea I wrote the algorithm his company uses. My royalty check was $50 million, and his boss was my college roommate. This is how I ended his career before dessert. Chapter 1. The Quiet Genius. Alexander Ross had learned to appreciate silence. His modern downtown loft with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline felt like a sanctuary from the chaos that had defined his marriage to Tanya. 3 years had passed since the divorce, and in that time, he'd rebuilt himself from the ground up. He stood at his mahogany desk reviewing the latest royalty statement from Tech Corp Industries. The numbers were staggering as they had been for the past 5 years. The Phoenix algorithm, his creation, his baby, had revolutionized predictive analytics in the tech industry. Every quarter, the deposits came like clockwork. This quarter, $12.3 million. His lawyer, Raoul O'Connell, had structured the intellectual property agreement brilliantly. Alexander owned the algorithm outright. Companies licensed it. At 42, Alexander looked younger than his years. Regular gym sessions had kept him fit, and his salt and pepper hair gave him a distinguished appearance. But it was his eyes, sharp, calculating, always observing, that revealed his true nature. He was a man who saw patterns where others saw chaos, solutions where others saw problems. His phone buzzed, a text from his daughter, Abby. Dad, Mom insists you come to Christmas dinner at Grandma's. Says it's important for family unity. She'll be bringing Garrett. Please come for me. Christmas tree. Alexander's jaw tightened. Garrett Cole. The name alone made his blood pressure spike. Tanya's new husband of 6 months. A mid-level marketing executive at Tech Corp who strutted around like he owned the world. Alexander had done his research. Of course, Garrett was everything Alexander wasn't. Loud, flashy, desperate for attention. He drove a lease Mercedes, wore expensive suits he couldn't truly afford, and posted incessantly on social media about his executive lifestyle. The irony wasn't lost on Alexander. Garrett worked for Tech Corp, the same Tech Corp that paid Alexander millions for the Phoenix algorithm. The same algorithm that Garrett's entire department used for their marketing analytics. Garrett had no idea. But there was something else Alexander had discovered during his quiet investigation into his ex-wife's new husband. Garrett had been presenting the algorithm's insights as his own innovative strategies. Internal memos, presentations to the board. All of it painted Garrett as some kind of marketing genius when he was simply reading the outputs Alexander's creation generated. Alexander replied to Abby, "I'll be there, sweetheart. Wouldn't miss it." He walked to his window, watching the December snow fall over the city. The past 3 years hadn't been about bitterness. They'd been about building. While Tanya had monkey branched from their marriage to Garrett, Alexander had focused on his work, his daughter, and his investments. The Phoenix algorithm had made him wealthy beyond measure, but more importantly, it had given him independence. His mind drifted back to MIT, where he'd met Stuart Collins in their sophomore year. They'd been roommates, best friends, coding partners who pulled countless all-nighters fueled by pizza and energy drinks. Stuart had gone the corporate route, climbing the ladder at Tech Corp until he became CEO 5 years ago. Alexander had chosen the freelance path, consulting, creating, owning his work rather than selling his soul to a corporation. Stuart had been the one to license the Phoenix algorithm for Tech Corp, offering Alexander a deal that was almost too generous. $50 million up front, plus 3% of all revenue generated using the algorithm. Stuart knew genius when he saw it. That algorithm had generated over $2 billion for Tech Corp in 5 years. Alexander picked up his phone and dialed, "Alex, to what do I owe the pleasure?" Stuart's warm voice came through. "Just thinking about old times, Stu. How's everything at Tech Corporation? Crazy as always. We're preparing for the Q4 board meeting. The Phoenix algorithm continues to be our golden goose. I keep telling the board, we need to build a statue of you in the lobby." Alexander chuckled. "I'm sure the shareholders would love that. Hey, quick question. Do you know a Garrett Cole in your marketing department?" There was a pause. "Cole? Yeah, he's one of our marketing managers. Why do you ask?" "Just curious. I'll explain later. Listen, any chance you're free for Christmas?" "Actually, the board meeting got moved to the 26th, so I'm stuck in town." "What?" "My ex-wife is hosting Christmas dinner at her mother's place. Bringing her new husband. Thought you might enjoy the entertainment." Stuart laughed. "Tanya's new husband. This I've got to see. Text me the details." After hanging up, Alexander allowed himself a small smile. The pieces were falling into place. Chapter 2. The Gathering Storm. Christmas Eve arrived with fresh snow and bitter cold. Alexander dressed carefully. A charcoal cashmere sweater, dark jeans, and his vintage Rolex, a gift from Stuart when the Tech Corp deal had closed. He looked successful, but not showy, comfortable, but not casual. Abby had texted him throughout the day, clearly anxious about the dinner. At 19, she was home from Northwestern for winter break, studying computer science, much to Alexander's pride and Tanya's confusion. His daughter had inherited his analytical mind and thankfully his temperament. "Dad. Garrett's already being insufferable. He's showing everyone his company car and talking about his executive achievements. Mom's eating it up. Grandma looks ready to murder someone." Alexander smiled. Tanya's mother, Mercedes Hooper, had never approved of the divorce. She'd called Tanya a fool for leaving a good man for a peacock. Mercedes was a sharp-tongued woman in her 70s who'd built her own successful catering business and had no patience for pretenders. He arrived at Mercedes's sprawling Victorian home in Evanston at 6 o'clock sharp. The house blazed with Christmas lights and through the windows he could see people moving about. He grabbed the wine he brought, a $500 bottle of Chateau Margaux, not to show off, but because Mercedes appreciated quality, and headed to the door. Abby opened it before he could knock, throwing her arms around him. "Thank God you're here. It's been awful." She looked like her mother, but had Alexander's eyes. Observant, intelligent. She wore a simple red dress and had her dark hair pulled back. "That bad?" Alexander murmured. "Worse? Come on." The house was filled with extended family. Mercedes's annual Christmas gathering typically hosted 25 to 30 people. Cousins, aunts, uncles, and friends who become family over the years. The dining room table was already set for a feast. Mercedes spotted him immediately and made her way over elegant in a green velvet dress. "Alexander. Finally, someone with sense arrives." She kissed his cheek and took the wine. "Chateau Margaux, you spoil me. Only the best for you, Mercedes. Unlike some people who bring grocery store champagne and expect praise," she said pointedly, her eyes flicking toward the living room where Garrett's booming laugh echoed. Alexander followed her gaze and saw him for the first time in person. Garrett Cole was tall, athletic in a gym rat kind of way with perfectly styled blonde hair and a spray tan that looked orange in the warm lighting. He wore a designer suit that screamed trying too hard and was holding court with several family members, gesturing wildly as he told some story. Tanya stood beside him, laughing at everything he said. She'd changed since the divorce. More makeup, tighter clothes. Her auburn hair dyed a lighter shade. She looked like someone trying to recapture youth rather than aging gracefully. And then I told the VP, if you want innovation, you got to take risks. They implemented my strategy and boom, 30% increase in Q3. That's what real leadership looks like. Garrett's voice carried across the room. Alexander felt Abby tense beside him. He's been like this for an hour, she whispered. Don't worry, Alexander said calmly. Let him talk. Mercedes squeezed his arm. Dinner's at 7. Try not to break anything before then. She winked and headed back to the kitchen. Alexander made his rounds, greeting relatives he hadn't seen in months. Everyone asked about his work with genuine interest, though he kept his answers vague, consulting, mostly, keeping busy. No one needed to know about the millions sitting in his accounts. At 6:45, his phone buzzed outside. This is going to be good. Alexander stepped out onto the porch and found Stuart leaning against a black Tesla, grinning. Stuart had aged well too. Same sharp features though his hairline had receded slightly. He wore an expensive wool coat and carried a bottle of Dominone. Alex, you look good. Life after divorce suits you. They embraced briefly. You look like a CEO. It suits you. So where's this new husband of Tanya's? I'm dying to meet the man who thinks he's hot inside, regaling everyone with tales of his brilliance. Fair warning, he works for you. Stuart's eyebrows shot up. You're kidding. Garrett Cole is Tanya's new husband. Small world, isn't it? Stuart started laughing. Oh, this is too good. The clown has been submitting reports claiming he's developed proprietary analytical strategies. I've seen his presentations. He's literally just copying Phoenix outputs and rebranding them as his insights. I know. I've seen them, too. Stuart's expression shifted from amusement to understanding. You're planning something. Just planning to enjoy Christmas dinner with family. Alexander's smile was enigmatic. I know that. Look, you're about to destroy someone. Would I do that at Christmas dinner? Absolutely. And I wouldn't miss it for the world. What do you need from me? Alexander's smile widened. Just follow my lead and maybe keep your phone handy. They walked inside together and the energy in the room shifted immediately. Several people recognized Stuart from TechCore's frequent media appearances. The boy genius CEO who'd taken a struggling company and turned it into a tech giant. Garrett noticed too. His eyes lit up with the desperation of a social climber spotting an opportunity. Chapter 3. The calm before dinner was called and everyone moved to the expansive dining room. Mercedes had outdone herself. Roasted turkey, glazed ham, 7 different side dishes, and enough desserts to feed an army. The table was set with her fine china and crystal glasses. Alexander found himself seated between Abby and Stuart, directly across from Tanya and Garrett. Perfect. Garrett had been trying to get Stoyart's attention since they'd arrived, but Stoyart had smoothly deflected, staying close to Alexander and catching up. Now trapped at the dinner table, Garrett saw his opportunity. Mr. Collins, I didn't know you'd be here. I'm Garrett Cole, marketing manager at Tech Corporation. I've been with the company for 3 years. Stuart looked up from his plate, his expression politely neutral. Garrett? Yes, I've seen your name on some reports. Garrett puffed up like a peacock. I've been working on some really innovative strategies for our Q4 push. The analytics have been phenomenal. I'd love to discuss them with you sometime. Maybe over golf. I don't golf, Stoyart said flatly, turning back to his conversation with Alexander. Tanya jumped in, her voice sharp. Garrett's being modest. He's the one who developed the new marketing framework everyone's talking about. His boss says he's on track for VP. Alexander sipped his wine, saying nothing. Abby kicked him gently under the table. A warning or encouragement, he wasn't sure which. Garrett's attention shifted to Alexander for the first time. Alex, right? Tanya's mentioned you. You do computers or something. Something like that. Alexander replied evenly. It's a tough field. Lots of competition. I imagine you're scrambling for clients, especially in this economy. Garrett's tone was dripping with condescension. Several people at the table shifted uncomfortably. Mercedes' fork stopped halfway to her mouth. I manage, Alexander said. Tanya laughed. A brittle mean sound. Alex does freelance consulting. He worked from home. It's very flexible. The implication was clear. Alexander was struggling while Garrett was thriving. Garrett leaned back, warming to his audience. You know what, Alex? I can maybe put in a good word for you at Tech Corporation. We're always looking for junior developers. The pay isn't great to start, but it's steady. Better than chasing contracts. The table went silent. Mercedes looked ready to intervene, but Alexander caught her eye and gave a subtle shake of his head. That's generous, Garrett. But I'm quite happy with my current arrangement. Pride's a dangerous thing, buddy. You've got to be realistic. I mean, what are you really making from freelancing? 40-50 grand a year? Meanwhile, Tech Corp just gave me a year-end bonus that could buy a car. Garrett smirked. Stuart coughed into his wine. Alexander could see him fighting laughter. Abby spoke up, her voice cold. Dad's doing just fine, Garrett. Maybe we should talk about something else. I'm just trying to help, sweetie. Your dad's too proud to admit he's struggling. I see it all the time. Guys his age who can't adapt to the changing tech landscape. They get left behind. Tanya placed her hand on Garrett's arm. Garrett's right. Alexander, you should really consider it. Stable income benefits. Maybe you could finally upgrade from that tiny loft. Alexander's loft was 3,000 square feet of prime downtown real estate worth $2.5 million, but he didn't correct her. Mercedes had heard enough. Perhaps we should. Garrett interrupted her. No, it's fine. I'm just being honest. Alex seems like a nice enough guy, just stuck in the past. The world's moved on. You need to be aggressive, innovative. That's why I'm succeeding at Tech Corp. I don't just follow orders. I create solutions. I'm a thought leader. Stuart's jaw twitched. Alexander placed a subtle hand on his arm. A thought leader. Alexander repeated. Interesting. Tell me, Garrett, what's your biggest innovation at Tech Corp? Garrett's chest puffed up again. The Phoenix implementation strategy. I developed a framework for utilizing advanced predictive analytics to optimize marketing spend across 17 different channels simultaneously. Increased ROI by 32%. The board was blown away. My VP said it was the most innovative approach he'd seen in 15 years. Stuart was gripping his wine glass so hard Alexander thought it might shatter. The Phoenix implementation strategy, Alexander said slowly. Catchy name. I'm good with branding. It's about understanding the technology and making it work for you. Most people just see numbers. I see opportunities. And this technology you're using, where did it come from? Garrett waved his hand dismissively. Some external contractor developed the base algorithm years ago. But the real genius isn't how you apply it. That's where I come in. The contractor just wrote code. I turned it into a business strategy. Some contractor, Alexander murmured. Tanya jumped back in, sensing an opportunity to twist the knife. See, Alexander, this is what success looks like. Garrett's going places. He's already being considered for regional director. We just bought a house in Lincoln Park. 4 bedrooms, completely renovated. Congratulations, Alexander said genuinely. I'm sure you'll be very happy there. His calm response seemed to irritate Tanya. She'd expected hurt or jealousy. Garrett, emboldened by wine and ego, pressed on. You know what, Alex? I feel bad for you sitting here watching your ex-wife thrive with a real man, knowing you couldn't provide for her the way I can. I've got to sting. The table erupted in uncomfortable murmurs. Abby stood up. That's enough, Garrett. Sit down. Abigail. Tanya snapped. Garrett's just being honest. Mercedes stood as well. In my house, we treat guests with respect. Garrett stood, swaying slightly. The wine had gone to his head. Respect? This broke loser shows up to family dinner like he belongs here. He couldn't keep his wife happy. Can't hold down a real job. And he's sitting next to my boss trying to what? Network. It's pathetic. He grabbed his wine glass and before anyone could react, threw the contents across the table. Red wine splashed across Alexander's face and sweater, dripping onto Mercedes's antique tablecloth. The room exploded. Mercedes started shouting. Abby was crying. Family members jumped up, but Alexander simply sat there, wine dripping from his face, perfectly calm. He pulled out his handkerchief and carefully wiped his face. Then he looked at Stoyart, who was staring at Garrett with undisguised fury. Stuart, Alexander said quietly. Maybe now would be a good time for that phone call. Stuart pulled out his phone, his hands shaking with rage. With pleasure. Chapter 4. The first crack. The chaos continued around them as Alexander calmly wiped wine from his face. Garrett stood triumphantly, Tanya's hand on his arm. Both of them smirking as if they'd won some victory. The rest of the family looked horrified. Mercedes grabbed a towel and rushed Alexander. I'm so sorry. This is unforgivable. It's fine, Mercedes. Really? Alexander's voice was steady, almost serene. He looked at Garrett. Feel better now? Actually, yeah, I do. Someone needed to put you in your place. Garrett's confidence was at its peak. He turned to Stuart. Mr. Collins, I apologize you had to witness this family drama. Some people just can't handle being around successful individuals. Stuart stood slowly and there was something dangerous in his posture. Garrett, I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. Of course, sir. Like I said, I'd love to discuss my performance review. You're fired. The room went silent. Even the relatives who'd been cleaning up the wine spill froze. Garrett laughed nervously. I'm sorry. What? You're terminated. Effective immediately. Security will box up your desk on the 26th. Your access cards will be deactivated tonight. You have 30 days to remove yourself from company health insurance. The color drained from Garrett's face. You can't. This is a joke. Mr. Collins, I'm one of your best performers. You're a fraud. Stuart's voice was ice. You've been claiming credit for work you didn't do. Presenting insights generated by proprietary technology as your own innovations and systematically lying to your superiors about your contributions. That's grounds for termination and possibly legal action. Tanya stood up. This is ridiculous. You're firing him because he threw wine at your friend. That's abuse of power. I'm firing him because he's a thief and a liar. Stuart turned to Alexander. Alex, would you like to explain or should I? Alexander stood brushing wine drops off his sweater. He looked at Garrett with something close to pity. The Phoenix algorithm, the external contractor. Who developed it? That was me. Garrett's face went from pale to gray. That's your lying. Am I? Alexander pulled out his phone and opened his email. Here's the original licensing agreement between myself and Tech Corp signed 5 years ago. $50 million upfront payment plus 3% of all revenue generated using the algorithm. Stuart, how much revenue has Phoenix generated for Tech Corp? Approximately $2.1 billion, Stuart replied. Abai's eyes went wide. She'd known her father was comfortable. But this, Alexander continued, his voice calm, but carrying to every corner of the room. That means I've received roughly $113 million in royalty payments over 5 years. This quarter alone, I made $12.3 million. The algorithm you've been claiming as the foundation of your innovations, I own it. Every single line of code. Tanya sat down heavily, her face ashen. But here's the thing, Garrett. I didn't mind you using it. That's what it's for. Companies license it to improve their business. What I do mind is you presenting its outputs as your own genius. You've been telling people you developed the Phoenix implementation strategy when really you've just been reading the reports my algorithm generates and repackaging them. Garrett's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I added value. I interpreted the data. You copied and pasted. Stuart interjected. I pulled your reports this afternoon after Alex called me. 87% of your innovative strategies are word for word from Phoenix outputs. You've been committing intellectual property fraud. Everyone uses the algorithm. Garrett's voice was desperate now, looking around the table for support and finding none. Everyone uses it and credits it properly. Stuart said, they don't claim they invented the insights. You presented yourself to the board as the creator of novel methodologies. You've been lying to collect bonuses and promotions based on someone else's work. Alexander's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled slightly. Ah, here we go. That's my lawyer, Raul O'Onnell. I forwarded him Garrett's internal presentations earlier this week. He's confirmed we have grounds for a lawsuit for unauthorized appropriation of proprietary intellectual property and fraud. Garrett stumbled backward. You're suing me? Not yet. That depends on how cooperative you are. Alexander's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. You have 2 choices, Garrett. Option 1, you sign a statement admitting to the fraud. Return all bonuses received based on false performance claims. I believe it's roughly $85,000 over the past 18 months and agreeing never to work in tech analytics again. You do this quietly and we don't pursue legal action. Or Garrett's voice was barely a whisper, or we go to court. I have documentation of every instance where you claimed credit for Phoenix-generated insights. I have emails where you explicitly told colleagues you developed these strategies yourself. I have internal memos where you pitch yourself for promotion based on innovations that were actually my algorithm's outputs. In court, this becomes public record. Your name gets attached to fraud. You become unhireable in any professional capacity, Stoyard added. And Tech Corp will pursue its own legal action for the bonuses paid under false pretenses. We take intellectual property very seriously. Garrett looked at Tanya desperately. She was staring at Alexander like she was seeing him for the first time. How long have you known? She whispered. Alexander turned to her. That he worked for Tech Corporation since you started dating. That he was committing fraud. About 6 months ago, Stuart and I have been documenting everything. And you just waited. I waited for the right moment. You wanted to parade him in front of our family, show everyone how much better off you were. I thought it was only fair to let the truth come out in the same venue. Mercedes was smiling behind her napkin, enjoying this far more than she probably should. Garrett found his voice again. You did this for revenge because Tanya left you? That's pathetic. No, Alexander said calmly. I did this because you threw wine in my face and called me a broke loser in front of my daughter and family. The revenge was already planned. That just determined the timing. He looked around the table at the stunned faces. For 3 years, I've watched Tanya post on social media about her successful new life with her executive husband. I've listened to Abby tell me stories about Garrett's arrogance and condescension. I've seen the way you both looked down on me, pitted me, assumed I was struggling, and I said nothing because I didn't care. My success doesn't require an audience. But tonight, you made it personal. You humiliated me in front of people I care about. So, yes, Garrett, I planned this. I've been planning it for months, and it's not over yet. Chapter 5. The depths revealed. The room remained frozen. Everyone processing what they just witnessed. Garrett stood there, his expensive suit now looking like a costume, his carefully crafted image crumbling. Tanya finally found her voice. You've been rich this whole time. While I was struggling with a mortgage, asking you for help with Abai's tuition, you were sitting on millions. Alexander's expression hardened. I paid Abai's tuition in full all 4 years, plus her housing. I've never missed a single payment to you, Tanya. The divorce settlement gave you the house, half our savings, and alimony until you remarried, which you did 6 months ago and in my obligation. I've been more than fair. Fair? You let me think you were barely scraping by. I never lied to you. You assumed there's a difference. He turned to Abby. Did you know I was struggling? Abby shook her head, tears streaming down her face, but she was smiling. You paid for everything. You took me on vacation to Italy last summer. You bought me a car for my 18th birthday. I knew you were doing well, but she looked at Garrett with disgust. I tried to tell them. I told Mom you were successful, but she didn't want to hear it because she wanted to believe her own narrative, Mercedes said sharply. That she traded up that Garrett was the better man. Pride is a terrible thing, Tanya. Stuart's phone rang. He looked at the screen and smiled coldly. It's our head of legal. Excuse me. He stepped into the hallway. Garrett seemed to be having trouble breathing. My career? You destroyed my career over wine? No. Alexander corrected. You destroyed your career by being a fraud. I just expedited the timeline. Eventually, someone at Tech Corp would have noticed that your genius strategies dried up the moment the algorithm updated or changed. You were always going to get caught, Garrett. I just made sure it happened in front of the people who needed to see who you really are. He looked at Tanya, and that includes your wife. Tanya's hands were shaking. The house, the mortgage on the new house. Garrett said his promotion would cover it, but now there's no promotion, no job, no bonuses to return. Alexander's voice wasn't cruel, just factual. You overextended based on future earnings that were built on fraud. That's not my problem, Tanya. Stuart returned, and his expression was grim satisfaction. Legal just confirmed something interesting. Garrett, you signed an intellectual property agreement when you joined Tech Corp. It explicitly states that any work product, any innovations, any strategies developed using company resources or proprietary technology must be properly attributed. You violated that agreement systematically. They can't prove. We can't. We've been tracking algorithm usage. Every time someone runs a Phoenix query, it's logged. We match your reports to query timestamps. 93% of the time, you ran a Phoenix analysis within 48 hours of submitting a new strategy. The correlation is undeniable. Garrett sat down heavily, his head in his hands. But Alexander wasn't done. He pulled out a folder from his bag. He brought it knowing this moment would come. There's more, Garrett. I've been very thorough. He slid several photographs across the table. These are from the Tech Corp Leadership Conference in Miami last September. You told Tanya you were at a training seminar. Tanya grabbed the photos, her face going white. They showed Garrett at a beachside bar with a blonde woman kissing her, his hand on her waist. Her name is Fa Haney. She's a sales rep from your Miami branch. You've been seeing her for 7 months since before your wedding to Tanya. Tanya's hand flew to her mouth. You said that conference was mandatory, that spouses couldn't attend. Garrett's head snapped up. You had me investigated. You had me followed. I hired a discreet investigator. Yes. Once I knew you were committing fraud at Tech Corp, I wanted to know what else you were lying about. Turns out quite a lot. Alexander pulled out more documents. You're also underwater on your Mercedes lease. You're 3 months behind on payments. Your credit score is $580. You have $67,000 in credit card debt. Most of it from trying to maintain the appearance of success. The designer suits, the expensive dinners, the watch you're wearing, all bought on credit you can't afford. Tanya was crying now, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage and humiliation. The house he just bought. Garrett put down 3% with an adjustable rate mortgage because it was the only way you qualified. When his promotion didn't increase his income enough, he planned to refinance using Tech Corp stock options he claimed were coming. Stock options that were predicated on his innovative performance that was fraudulent. Mercedes whistled low. You're not just a fraud, boy. You're a disaster. Stuart looked at Alexander with newfound respect. Remind me never to piss you off. This is insane, Garrett shouted, standing up again. You can't just destroy someone's life like this. You destroyed your own life, Alexander said quietly. I just documented it. Every piece of information I've shared tonight is a matter of record. The fraud, the debt, the affair, all real, all your choices. I didn't create these problems, Garrett. You did. He stood and addressed the room. I came here tonight knowing this would happen. I've known for months. I could have handled this quietly. Sent the evidence to Stuart. Let him fire Garrett. Let the marriage implode on its own. But Garrett made it clear how he sees people he considers beneath him. The contempt, the cruelty, the casual humiliation that needed to be answered publicly. Abby stood and hugged her father tightly. I'm so proud of you, Dad. Over her shoulder. Alexander looked at Tanya. You left me because you said I was too passive, too quiet, too unwilling to fight for what I wanted. You wanted someone aggressive, someone who projected power. Well, you got him. How's that working out? Tanya couldn't speak. She'd just stare at the photos of Garrett with another woman, her world collapsing. Chapter 6. The Choice. Stuart cleared his throat. Garrett, I need your decision. Sign the admission and return the bonuses or we proceed with legal action. You have 60 seconds. Garrett looked around wildly as if searching for an escape route. His eyes landed on Alexander. What do you want? Money? I don't have it, but I can get it. I don't want any money, Garrett. I want you to understand consequences. You spent your entire adult life taking credit for other people's work, lying to get ahead, projecting confidence without substance. And it worked until tonight. This is what happens when the truth catches up. Please. Garrett's voice broke. I made mistakes. Okay. I shouldn't have said those things. Shouldn't have thrown the wine. I'm sorry. Are you sorry you did it? Or sorry you got caught? Alexander's voice was gentle, almost kind, which somehow made it worse. Gar had no answer. Stuart held out a tablet with a document on screen. This is the admission. It states that you knowingly claimed credit for insights generated by licensed proprietary technology, that you misrepresented your contributions to Tech Corp leadership, and that you agree to return all performance bonuses received based on these false claims. Sign it and we handle this internally. Refuse, and it becomes a matter for the courts. 30 seconds, Stuart added. Garrett's hand trembled as he took the tablet. He looked at Tanya, who was still staring at the photos of his affair, tears streaming down her face. He looked at the family members watching with expressions ranging from pity to satisfaction. He looked at Alexander, standing there calm and collected. The man he called a broke loser, now revealed as a multimillionaire who'd orchestrated his complete destruction. I'll sign, he whispered. Louder, Stuart said. I'll sign. Garrett's voice was stronger now, defeated, but clear. He scrolled his signature on the screen and handed the tablet back. Stuart forwarded the document immediately. Done. TechCorp legal team has it. You'll receive official termination papers and a repayment schedule within 48 hours. Garrett slumped back into his chair broken. But Alexander still wasn't finished. He turned to Tanya. I want you to understand something. I didn't do this to get back at you for leaving. People fall out of love. Marriages end. I was hurt, but I moved on. I did this because of how you've treated me since the divorce. The social media posts mocking my simple life. The comments to Abby about how I couldn't provide for her the way Garrett could. The pitying looks at school functions when you'd show up in designer clothes while I wore jeans and a sweater. Tanya's voice was hoarse. You were always so quiet about money. I thought you thought what you wanted to think. You needed to believe you'd made the right choice in leaving. So, you constructed a narrative where I was struggling and Garrett was thriving. But you never actually asked, Tanya. Not once in 3 years did you ask how I was really doing. Mercedes stood and started clearing dishes, signaling that the dinner portion of the evening was effectively over. Family members began helping, glad for something to do with their hands. While processing the drama, Alexander pulled Abby aside. "I'm sorry you had to see this. Don't be." She wiped her eyes. "I'm glad it happened. Garrett's been horrible to you for months, and Mom just encouraged it. They both needed to see that their actions have consequences. You're wise beyond your years. I learned from the best." She hugged him again. "Dad, why didn't you ever tell me about the algorithm money?" "Because I wanted you to understand the value of education and hard work on its own merits, not because of what it might earn you. Money is a tool, Abby, not an identity. Garrett made money his identity, and look what happened when it was taken away. He collapsed. I wanted you to build yourself on something more solid." Stuart joined them. "That was the most savage thing I've ever witnessed, and I've been in hostile boardroom takeovers. Remind me to send you a fruit basket." Alexander smiled. "It wasn't about being savage. It was about being thorough." "Is there anything else?" Stuart asked. "Any other revelations coming?" "One more thing," Alexander said, looking toward the living room where Garrett and Tanya were having a hushed, furious argument. "But that's between them now. My work here is done." Chapter 7. The Reckoning. The argument between Garrett and Tanya had moved to Mercedes's front porch. Their raised voices carrying through the cold December air. Through the window, Alexander could see them. Garrett gesturing wildly, Tanya crying and shouting, both of them unraveling. Inside, Mercedes was serving dessert to those who remained, though the festive mood had long since evaporated. Most of the extended family had found excuses to leave early, uncomfortable with the confrontation they'd witnessed. Stuart pulled Alexander aside near the fireplace. "I have to know. Was the affair really just something you discovered? Or did you set that up, too?" Alexander's expression gave nothing away. "Garrett set that up himself. I just documented it. But the investigator was in Miami specifically during that conference. I had reason to suspect Garrett's business trips weren't entirely business. The investigator confirmed it. If there'd been no affair, I wouldn't have manufactured one." Stuart shook his head in admiration. "You've changed, Alex. The guy I knew at MIT would have just walked away from this whole situation. The guy you knew at MIT didn't have a daughter watching him. Abby needed to see that quiet doesn't mean weak. That being smart and patient is more powerful than being loud and aggressive. Well, mission accomplished. That girl looks at you like you hung the moon." Stuart paused. "What happens now with Garrett? I mean, the repayment schedule for the bonuses is going to bury him, especially without a job. That's between him and Tech Core legal team. Though I imagine bankruptcy is in his future in the algorithm fraud lawsuit. I meant what I said. If he cooperates, we won't pursue it. I have no interest in destroying him beyond what he's already done to himself. But I needed the threat to be real for him to sign that admission." The front door opened and Garrett stumbled back in. His face red and blotchy. Tanya followed, her makeup ruined by tears. They looked like they'd aged 10 years in the past hour. Garrett walked directly to Alexander. For a moment, Stuart tensed, ready to intervene if things got physical. But Garrett just stood there, deflated. "I need to know," Garrett said quietly. "If I hadn't thrown the wine, if I hadn't said those things, would you still have done this?" Alexander considered the question eventually, but it would have been private. "I would have sent the evidence to Stuart. Let him handle the termination and let your marriage implode naturally when Tanya discovered the affair and the death. Tonight's public revelation, that was because you made it personal. I was drunk. I got carried away. You were cruel. There's a difference. Alcohol doesn't create malice. It reveals it." Alexander's voice wasn't angry, just tired. "You could have ignored me tonight, Garrett. I was prepared to sit quietly through dinner, exchange pleasantries, and leave. But you needed to assert dominance to humiliate someone you saw as weak. That was your choice." Tanya stepped forward. "Alexander, I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything. We're done, Tanya. This chapter of our lives is closed. The house. We can't afford the mortgage without Garrett's income. The payments are $8,000 a month. Then sell it. Downsize. File for bankruptcy if you need to. Those are your problems now, not mine." Mercedes appeared with coffee. Her timing impeccable. "Tanya. Garrett. I think it's time you left. This is still Christmas, and some of us would like to salvage what's left of the evening." Garrett looked like he wanted to say something more, but Tanya grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the door. As they left, Alexander heard Tanya's voice crack. "The picture's Garrett. Who is she? How long?" The door closed behind them and the house seemed to exhale. Abby appeared at Alexander's side carrying 2 cups of coffee. Is it weird that I feel bad for her? No, that means you have empathy. That's a good thing. But she was so mean to you. They both were. People are complicated, sweetheart. Your mother made choices based on what she thought would make her happy. She was wrong, but that doesn't mean she deserves to suffer forever. Natural consequences are enough. Mercedes sat down across from them. Stuart joining her. Alexander, that was the most dramatic Christmas dinner I've hosted in 47 years. I'm not sure whether to thank you or ban you from future gatherings. I'll accept either, Alexander said with a slight smile. What really gets me, Mercedes continued, is that you've been quietly successful all this time, never bragging, never correcting Tanya's assumptions. Why? Because my success isn't defined by other people's perception of it. I know what I've built, what I've accomplished. I don't need validation from anyone, especially not from people who chose to leave my life. Stuart raised his coffee cup to Alexander Ross, the quietest badass I've ever known. They toasted with coffee cups while snow continued to fall outside. Chapter 8, The Fallout. The week between Christmas and New Year's was a blur of consequences for Garrett and Tanya that Alexander watched from comfortable distance. He didn't actively pursue updates, but information found its way to him regardless. On December 27th, Abby called him. Dad, Mom's moving out of the new house. They listed it for sale yesterday. She's devastated. How are you handling all of this? Honestly, I'm relieved. Garrett was always terrible to her, too. She just couldn't see it. He controlled everything. What she wore, who she talked to, where she spent money. Now that the facade is gone, maybe she'll remember who she used to be. That's a mature perspective. I learned from the best. Abby paused. Dad, can I ask you something? The algorithm. How did you create it? Alexander smiled. He'd been wondering when she'd asked. It's complex, but the core concept is pattern recognition across seemingly unrelated datasets. Most analytics tools look at historical data linearly. Phoenix looks at it dimensionally. It identifies patterns that humans miss because we can't process information in that many dimensions simultaneously. Could you teach me? You want to learn algorithm development? I want to learn from you. The technical stuff I can get, Northwestern, but understanding how to think about problems the way you do, that's something special. Alexander felt warmth spread through his chest. I'd love that. Why don't you come to the loft tomorrow? I'll show you the original code. Really? The original Phoenix code? Why not? You're my daughter. Who else would I pass that knowledge to? After hanging up, Alexander walked to his window, looking out at the Chicago skyline. His phone buzzed with a message from Stuart. Board meeting today presenting the Garrett Cole situation. Thought you should know. 3 other employees came forward after his termination. You've been taking credit for their work, too. You didn't just catch a fraud. You exposed a systemic problem. Thank you. Alexander didn't reply immediately. Instead, he thought about the path that had led him here. 20 years ago, he'd been a kid at MIT with big dreams and bigger algorithms. He created Phoenix because he saw a problem that needed solving, not for fame or fortune. When Stuart had offered the licensing deal, Alexander had almost turned it down. The money seemed obscene for just doing what he loved. But his lawyer, Raoul, had been insistent. You created something valuable. You deserve to be compensated for that value. So, he'd signed. And his life had changed in ways he never anticipated. The divorce from Tanya had hurt. There was no denying that. But in hindsight, it had freed him. Freed him from constantly explaining himself, from justifying his quiet nature, from feeling like he was never quite enough. He'd build a life on his terms, answerable to no one. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Mr. Ross, this is Robert Frost from the Wall Street Journal. I'm working on a story about intellectual property fraud in the tech sector and Garrett Cole's case came across my desk. Would you be willing to comment? No comment, Alexander said immediately. I understand you're the creator of the Phoenix algorithm and that Mr. Cole systematically misrepresented your work as his own innovations. This is a bigger story than one man's fraud. It's about how companies protect intellectual property and credit their innovators. Mr. Frost, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I'm not interested in public attention. The matter has been resolved privately. With all due respect, sir, Tech Corp's filing suggests they're pursuing similar cases against other employees. Your algorithm has generated billions in value. People should know who created it. Alexander paused. If you write this story, you do it without my participation. I won't confirm or deny anything. Won't provide quotes or interviews. My work speaks for itself. Fair enough. But for what it's worth, Mr. Ross, the tech community should know your name. You've revolutionized predictive analytics, and you've done it while remaining completely under the radar. That's impressive. After the call ended, Alexander sat and thought. Fame had never been his goal. But Abby was right. There was value in people understanding that quiet competence could be more powerful than loud bravado. 3 days later, the Wall Street Journal article published. The headline read, "The Algorithm Genius You've Never Heard of. How Alexander Ross Revolutionized Tech and Exposed a Fraud." The article was thorough but respectful, focusing on Phoenix's technical innovations and its massive financial success without sensationalizing the Garrett situation. It painted Alexander as a reclusive genius who'd built an empire while maintaining complete privacy. Within hours, his LinkedIn profile had 10,000 new connection requests. His email was flooded with interview requests, speaking opportunities, and business proposals. He ignored all of it. Chapter 9, The New Beginning. New Year's Eve found Alexander at his loft with Abby, teaching her the fundamentals of algorithmic thinking. They'd spent the past week going through Phoenix's code with Alexander explaining not just what the code did, but why he made each design choice. The key, he explained, pulling up a particularly complex section, is understanding that computers are literal, but humans are contextual. You have to translate human context into literal instructions, and that requires you to think in both languages simultaneously. Abby was furiously taking notes. This is so much more interesting than my classes. Professor Jenkins just has us memorizing syntax. Syntax is important, but it's just the alphabet. This is learning to write poetry. His phone buzzed. Mercedes family dinner tomorrow for New Year's Day. Just us, you, me, Abby, and Stuart if he's free. No drama, I promise. Alexander smiled and confirmed. At 11:30 p.m., as they were debugging a section of code Abby had written, the building's front desk called up. "Mr. Ross, you have a visitor, a Ms. Tanya Callahan. Should I send her up?" Alexander and Abby exchanged glances. "Give us a minute," Alexander said. "Dad, you don't have to see her." "I know, but maybe I should." He picked up the phone, sent her up. Tanya looked different. No designer clothes, minimal makeup, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked like the woman he'd married 20 years ago before the need to compete and impress had consumed her. "I'm sorry to just show up," she said quietly. "I know I have no right." "Come in," Alexander said. They sat in the living room while Abby diplomatically retreated to the study. Through the windows, the Chicago skyline glittered with New Year's preparations. "I've been doing a lot of thinking this week," Tanya began. "About our marriage, about why I left, about what I was looking for with Garrett." "Tanya, you don't owe me explanations. Let me finish, please." She took a breath. "I left because I thought you were too passive, too content with enough. I wanted excitement, ambition, someone who fought for things. And when I met Garrett, he seemed like everything you weren't. Aggressive, ambitious, always pushing for more. I know you told me this 3 years ago, but I was wrong about what those qualities meant. Garrett wasn't ambitious. He was desperate. He wasn't confident. He was insecure and compensating. And he wasn't fighting for anything real. He was just fighting to seem important." Alexander said nothing, letting her continue. "You were never passive, Alexander. You were strategic. You were never content with enough. You just didn't need to broadcast your success to feel validated. Everything I criticized you for was actually strength. And I was too stupid to see it. You weren't stupid. You wanted different things. That's allowed. I humiliated you. For 3 years, I made you the punchline of my success story. I let Garrett treat you terribly. I laughed when he threw wine in your face." Tears were streaming down her cheeks now. "And you could have destroyed me at any point. You could have told everyone about your success, made me look like a fool. But you didn't. Why? Because proving you wrong wouldn't have made me happy. Being successful and secure in who I am. That's what makes me happy. Your opinion of me stopped matching the day you left." Tanya flinched as if struck. "God, that's brutal. It's honest. Tanya, I don't hate you. I don't wish bad things for you, but I also don't need your validation or your apology. I've moved on. Garrett and I are getting divorced. I caught him with fate 2 days ago. He'd been planning to leave me once he got the VP promotion. He just wanted to use my credit to secure the house first. I'm sorry you're going through that." "Are you really?" Alexander considered. "Yes. Not because I want you back or because I'm enjoying your pain, but because I remember the woman I married and she deserved better than Garrett Cole. I hope you find that again someday." Tanya laughed bitterly. "The woman you married was already turning into the woman who left you. Maybe this is what I deserve. Nobody deserves to be cheated on and used. Learn from it and do better next time. They sat in silence for a moment. Finally, Tanya stood. Thank you for seeing me. And Alexander, I really am sorry for all of it. I know. Take care of yourself, Tanya. After she left, Abby emerged from the study. That was big of you, Dad. Being kind to her after everything. Holding on to anger takes energy, and I'd rather use that energy for something productive. Besides, I have everything I need right here. My work, my daughter, my peace of mind. Why would I waste time on bitterness? At midnight, they watched fireworks explode over the city, ringing in the new year. Alexander's phone lit up with messages. Stoyart, Happy New Year to the smartest person I know. Don't ever change, Mercedes. To new beginnings and old victories. See you tomorrow, Raul. 3 new licensing inquiries for Phoenix. We're going to have a very profitable year. Happy New Year, Alex. Abby raised her glass of sparkling cider. To my dad, the badass who taught me that real power doesn't need to be loud. Alexander clinked his glass against hers. To being true to yourself, no matter what anyone else thinks. As fireworks continued to light up the sky, Alexander reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He'd built an algorithm that changed an industry, amassed a fortune that gave him freedom, and navigated betrayal with dignity and strategic precision. But more than any of that, he taught his daughter that success isn't measured by others' opinions. It's measured by your own integrity and peace of mind. Garrett Cole had tried to humiliate him at a Christmas dinner to make him feel small in front of his family. Instead, he'd triggered his own complete destruction while Alexander remained standing unshaken, stronger than ever. The algorithm of revenge, Alexander thought, wasn't about destruction. It was about revelation. He hadn't destroyed Garrett. He'd simply revealed who Garrett truly was and let natural consequences do the rest. That was the beauty of real power. It didn't need to be cruel or vindictive. It just needed to be patient and precise. As the last fireworks faded, Alexander looked at his daughter, brilliant, kind, learning to code with the same passion he'd had at her age, and realized that this was his real victory. Not the money, not the satisfaction of watching Garrett fall, but this moment right here, passing on knowledge, building something that would outlast him, showing Abby that quiet strength could move mountains. The Phoenix algorithm had revolutionized an industry. But the greatest algorithm Alexander Ross had ever created was the one for living well. Stay true to yourself. Build on solid foundations. Let your work speak for itself and remember that revenge is best served with patience and precision. In the window's reflection, he caught sight of himself. Successful, content, at peace. Garrett had called him a broke loser. Tanya had pitted him. They'd both been so wrong. It was almost funny. Almost. Alexander smiled, raised his glass to the skyline, and stepped into the new year with his daughter beside him and his future bright before him. The algorithm had worked perfectly. The variables had been controlled. The outcome was optimal. Victory, he thought, had never tasted sweeter. And there you have it.
That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the stories. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.